Okay, so hi everybody, thanks for your patience, and I've got a fancy microphone, so you know this is official. Some quick housekeeping. I am expecting you to be respectful to those around you, to pay attention, to implement at least one item from this talk, tip, trick, tool, whatever, see rule number 1, and set all devices to off silent mode. So that way we can hear what's going on and because they're recording. So this is the obligatory about me slide because every speaker is supposed to do this. This is the giving you some of my background. When they teach you speaking, this is the whole make them feel that you're credible and you know what you're talking about. So hopefully I'm going to be able to do that. So this is my 18th year in the game industry. I have spent 14 of those years in video games. You'll find over 30 game credits on my list, including some that are uncredited or that I can't actually talk about. This is a very NDA-friendly industry, so you'll kind of get used to that. I've owned or worked for and with studios, publishers, recruiters, hence getting a job, and service companies. I've been active in the IGDA since 1999. I've done production to QA, marketing to design. I wear many hats: manager, mentor, advocate, volunteer, speaker, organizer, colleague, and friend. Lastly, I'm blunt, direct, detail-oriented, loyal, determined, and overcommitted. Whew. Okay, so now it's time to talk about DDD, which is my company. So DDD helps clients improve their customer experience and get things done. A customer can include an actual customer, a client, an employer, which is going to be useful for you guys, a coworker, a vendor or a partner, a colleague. You know, sky's the limit. DDD educates companies and groups on quality assurance and customer support best practices. What I do for DDD, my main areas of focus for DDD are in project management and customer experience design on the corporate side, with career and life coaching on the individual side. I do this through training, speaking, consulting, coaching. I often do contract work for hire jobs, hence a lot of those I can't tell you about games that I worked on. My biggest efforts right now are focused on my 3Gs service for both website reviews and personal branding career services, so resumes, business cards, websites, bios, etc. I'll talk more about the 3Gs later. And I take on coaching clients as my spots open up. So why am I here? This is the, tell you what I'm going to tell you kind of bit. So I'm here to give you tips and tricks to create your personal brand, to enter the video game industry, to stay in the video game industry, which is harder than you think, and get involved in the video game industry. So that's stuff like IGA Chicago, which is where you're at right now. So this is the next obligatory slide. This is the tell you what you tell you slide. So this is the topics I'm going to cover through tonight. So that includes branding. What is your brand and do you know what others think it is? Breaking in or job searching, which is why most of you are here. So it's what you need to know about finding a job. I'll cover some freelance stuff too. We're going to talk about professional development. We're going to go over networking, mentoring, and even advocacy. So who you are. So if you're here, you're hopefully in or soon to be in the industry, along with smart, skilled, and passionate. So let's get to know each other. So just a show of hands, are you a developer? Great. Yeah. And developer doesn't just mean programmers. It means anybody that's actually involved in game development. It's a big misconception, but I totally get why that happens. Are you a student? Okay. Anybody here is an educator, so like Tom, doing teaching, that kind of stuff? Awesome. Would you call yourself an accountant? That's what I thought. An artist. Okay, that's a good chunk of the room. An audio monkey, so sound designer, composer. People are laughing and pointing. There's two of them. You guys can hang out afterwards and get to know each other. Commiserate. I get it. Biz dev monkey. So you actually are hoping to do the deals and put that kind of stuff together. Community manager. Do we have any community managers in the house? I got a lot of those.
Working on it.
Customer support. So you do customer support. You're a tech support monkey. I feel your pain, by the way, for anybody that has to do that.
I reckon I should have brought it
Designer. Do we have any designers? Okay. Not as well, we're kind of tying artists there. Hardware monkey. So you're working on actual platforms, consoles, that kind of stuff. Anybody? Nope. HR. Anybody in HR? I'm gonna go on that one usually. IT sysadmin. So you're the ones putting together the servers, PCs, networks. Ooh, we got a hand on that one. Lawyer. Do we have any lawyers in the house? No. Game lawyers exist, and we need them. Marketers. Do we have any marketing people? How about mathematicians? This is an actual job, along with economists. Valve actually has an economist that works for them. There's a big podcast on that. Okay, so if you weren't any of those, maybe you're in operations or you're an executive. Are you a producer? Any producers? Oop. We got 3 hands. Hug your producer today. They need it. Programmers. Come on, we gotta ask for. Oh, okay. And I'm seeing a lot of the same hands come up, so that should be interesting. Anybody here do PR? Just kind of what I do on the side. Getting to Okay. Recruiters. Do we have any recruiters in the house? R&D. Is there anybody who's literally that's all they do? Being takes. They just sit there and write stuff. No. Sales. Do we have any salespeople? Tech and tools. Are you on a tech team? You're creating tools. We got some good hands going up on that one. Okay, good. They're very crucial, and a lot of people kind of forget that they exist. Are you a translator or a localizer? So you kind of like take a game and you do all the subtitles in a different language for it. QA, go bug monkeys. Is there anybody here who is QA and wants to go? All right, I love you guys. I founded the IGDA's Quality Assurance Day with a bunch of other friends, so near and dear to my heart. Spent my first 5 years there, kind of doing a lot of QA. So, user research experience. Anybody focusing on that?
Right?
What?
Is that UI design?
No, it's different than UI. It's UX, user experience. So, like they'll do focus and playtesting where they'll literally see you they'll watch a player going through a level and go, why are they getting stuck there? Everybody tends to get tripped up here. So
it's like UI on the other side of the mirror?
Yes. Kinda. We got some kindas.
We do it when we test our games.
Web designers or developers. Great. Especially with the online games and everything, that's a huge part. How about writers, which are just about as low on the totem pole as QA? So
my own
respect on that one. And just so I know, because this helps me as I'm like answering questions or adding information, are you at the level of intern? Anybody who's an intern? If you are a student, you should be going for this as soon as possible. And don't wait until your last year before you graduate. An internship is key. One of my mentees actually got an internship at Maxis, working on The Sims, and then immediately moved on to Disney, and then is now a lead designer over at Zynga. So internships are key. They get you real-world experience, and more importantly, if you're in the right spot, you'll get a game credit, which is like the golden ticket for a lot of companies to get in there. Anybody at the associate or junior level in the industry? Okay. Mid-level or base. So generally this means you don't actually have a name in front of your title. It's just software engineer, right? Like, do we get any seniors? Do we have any seniors? Oop, we got a couple hands. Leads. Do we have any leads in the house? Okay. Directors. So this means you're in charge of everybody in your discipline. No, I didn't think so. Pretty sure none of this management or C-level or studio head. Any of those? Okay. We got in these, that's fine. You co-run your company. It happens. Okay, so obligatory topic slide number 1. So this is the whole I have to introduce you what I'm about to talk about. So the first topic we're going to talk about is branding. So what is this branding stuff? So a brand, these are the basic definitions for a brand. A class of goods identified by name as the product of a single firm or manufacturer. So this is the Nike swoosh. This is, the Apple on the back of your Mac or your iPod. That's a brand, right? And so when you're doing branding, that's the promoting of your product or service by identifying it with a particular brand. So you're going to tell me, but I'm a person. So I'm not a company. So, but you still have a brand, and this is what a lot of people don't realize. There's more than just corporate brands. There's actually personal brands. So whether you know it or not, you have your own personal brand, which is a set of characteristics, style choices, etc. that represent you. So for me, you'll notice that the header on my slide has purple in it, and my laptop cover has purple on it, and the wrap I'm wearing has purple on it, right? So purple, so that's my style. So it's one of the things I try and do is do all purple. It's kind of one of the things that sets me apart, and it's like, oh, that's the purple Sheri. So here's why it matters. Because you're gonna say, well, why does it having a brand matter? And I'm gonna tell you it's because the world is watching. So the quote is from Seth Godin and says, everything you do now ends up in your permanent record. The best plan is to overload Google with a long tail of good stuff and to always act as if you're on candid camera, because you are. The bit.ly link at the bottom, which I'll share later with slides, actually goes to his blog post talking about it. So basically is you start screwing up, you gotta create your own content. You gotta have stuff that's in your name on it. You gotta push all that crap down so that when the first page of Google comes up with your name, the employers aren't gonna see anything that they don't wanna see, right? That's your goal. So I get a lot of people that kind of dismiss this idea, right? And they're like, sure, but that's just the type of world we live in now, right? Everybody's on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, and they're telling the world and putting everything out there, and people can't figure out Facebook's privacy settings. So even if they wanted to, they have no idea what they just told all the potential employers. So, why should you care what your personal brand is? And I'm going to tell you, it's because of this. You want to do it because you want to have one of those. Those are all the reasons, just some of the reasons why you would want to care about your personal brand. How you appear to others and act towards others can make or break what happens as you move through this industry. It ties into your ability to network, to get in, to stay in. It's the difference between rising through the ranks or being shamed and blacklisted out of the industry. So a personal anecdote, I have a colleague who is a good friend of mine, got way too drunk at GDC, which is our big dev conference, acted very inappropriately at several parties, and then shortly after GDC was no longer at the company that she was with, and furthermore never worked in the industry again, and that was over a decade ago. So you have to be careful with what you're doing. You have to care about your brand. The choices you make, the way you act, that's going to affect how people look at you. So if one of those reasons spoke to you, it's time to figure out your brand. So you need to know what your brand is. You need to know if your branding is consistent, purple, purple, purple. You need to know if outsiders agree that that's what your brand is. And then you need to know how you can change or update your brand. So pop quiz, how many here have business cards? Raise your hand. Okay, those of you that didn't raise your hand, you've already failed. But it's okay, we'll fix that, we've got time. So now that the quiz is over, let's get into the 5 words or phrases. So this is an exercise that I do with groups. The best way to figure out what your personal brand is to start with a quick check of who you are. The easiest way to kickstart that process is my 5 words or phrases review. So we're going to do the first part of that now. This is why you're emailed to ask for pen and paper, get your tablet out, I don't care what you do, whatever you prefer, note or text file on your computer, whatever makes sense to you. The method doesn't matter as long as you get it down. Okay, so if you have that ready, I want you to write down 5 words or phrases that you think describes you. This is not how you think others perceive you. This is not your own, this is your own feelings about yourself. And I want you to focus on the you that exists right now. Don't focus on the you that used to be in the past. Don't focus on who you want to be in the future. So I would say I'm blunt, direct, detail-oriented, all the stuff that I went over in the About Me slide, right? So take a moment and think about 5 words or phrases that you would think describes you right now and get it down on paper. Don't forget to be honest with yourself. Don't make up stories about yourself. Alright, so now you've got your 5 words or phrases, or you're still working on it. So I'm going to give you some action items to do from this talk. So the first action item is you're going to complete the 5 words or phrases review. So I'll have some worksheets that you can all use to walk yourself through this afterwards. But here's essentially what you're going to do. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take the 5 words, you're going to set it aside, and you're going to find 5 other people that you trust to give you honest feedback. So don't ask like your mom, who of course thinks you're amazing and the best thing in the world, and how dare anybody criticize your little baby, right? Don't ask her. Ask somebody that you know is usually direct, tells you like it is, people that you trust to give you feedback. And ask them to give you 5 words or phrases that they think describes you. And then what you're going to do is you're going to compare that. So if you wrote down on your list stuff like, well, I'm detail-oriented, I'm punctual, I'm very conscientious and do a good job, that kind of stuff, and they're like, he's lazy, he's always late, right? Like if those sets of words aren't matching, you've got a problem, right? Either you're coming across differently to them than you should be, or how you think you are is clearly not how you're coming across to everybody else, which is why you have to find out if your branding is consistent, if the outsiders agree, because it doesn't matter how conscientious you think you are, how hardworking, if everybody else that sees you in your company or in your conferences thinks that you're the laziest son of a gun ever, then it doesn't matter, right? Because they've already got that preconceived notion. So you have to figure out what you need to do to change that. So that's why you got to decide on what your personal brand is. This is what your style is, how you want to portray yourself to others in various settings. But you have to make it realistic, right? So if you're chronically bad at being on time to stuff, and I know, joke, but if you're chronically bad at being on time to stuff, right, then don't say that you're going to be the earliest person in the world, right? Like you're going to get to early to everything. That's not going to be your style. Shoot for on time, right? So find little ways, make it realistic. But try and create something that's actually you. I would rather have something that is not so polished and real versus totally polished but fake. Because if I can tell that you're fake, then I don't want to listen to you, right? I automatically think you have no credibility, you have no substance. I don't want a fake person working for me on my projects, my companies. That's just not what I want. So then you're going to map out your personal brand. So this is where you figure out all the areas that your brand is seen by outsiders. This is your Facebook and LinkedIn profile. This is your portfolio and your website. This is your business card. This is what they see when you're out at conferences and events like this. And then you're going to create a game plan for getting your current and future behaviors to match what your desired brand is, right? So if you want to be known as the quirky person, but your website is totally serious, as if you came from a Fortune 500 company and you only speak in monotone, right? Like, those two don't match, right? Like, they have to match. Your styles have to match. So that's what you need to figure out, how you want to make those two sets match. And then what you need to do is set up reminders for yourself in your Google Calendar or iCal, whatever you need to do. If you have something on your phone, set a reminder to reevaluate what you're doing and check in with how you're doing. So when was the last time you updated your LinkedIn profile, right? So if it's really outdated, it doesn't match who you are, well then it's useless, right? Because they're looking at old information and maybe not the best you that you are right now. And then I'm going to give you a few resources. So the first link at the top, this is actually a link to a blog post on my DDD website that actually talks about the whole 5 words or phrases review. And what it also has is 2 downloadable PDFs on it. The first PDF is actually the entire article plus the worksheet, and then the second PDF is the worksheet, and I'll have several copies here later. So you can walk yourself through the process, you can hand it out to others, you can do that plan. The second link is to one of my mentors, Libby Gill. She's a branding expert. She works with lots of different companies and individuals and kind of gets them to show off the best that they can. She has lots of different tools, resources, books, so it's another place to check out. And then we'll have a map items checklist, which I'll share with you later since it's going to come through in a lot of different areas of this talk. So does anybody else still need time to write down the links? Yeah, I'll post this slide up later, but this way you can get it right now.
Is there any way we could get the slide deck sent to us if we're on the mailing list?
I don't know if it's going to go to the mailing list as the actual deck, but I have a SlideShare account where I put up all my decks. So I will make sure that once this talk is done and it's up there, that we email you out and say, here's where the deck and you can find it, and I'll have all that information on you. And anybody can mail me afterwards if you have questions or you need the links again. Are we good now? Okay. So obligatory topic slide number 2. So we finished branding, so now that we've got that sorted out, let's move on to networking. So what is networking? It's about connecting, building relationships, gaining access to things that you didn't have before. It's about support systems and paying it forward. It's about learning and growing and opening up opportunities for yourself. It's amazing what you can do when you have the right relationships. So why does it matter? It matters because everybody has to network, period. This is not an option, right? You can't just say, I'm going to get a job, but I'm never going to network. I'm going to go in the industry. That just does not happen. So you network because you want a job, a sale, a contract. You want to get pressed for your game. You want to get better at your job. Sooner or later, everybody needs help. This is why I was talking about this with the branding. It helps you in so many areas, including job searching. I'll cover the first bullet a little bit more in the job searching section, but as a personal example to you of networking, when I was at a previous company, I got brought in late Monday to one of the VP's offices and was told, look, we're doing layoffs. You will probably get laid off on Friday. This is late Monday night. I'm like, oh, okay, well, at least they gave me a few days' notice. I started talking to people in my network, made the usual call with the, hey, do you have my personal email address? Which is industry code for, I just got laid off or I'm leaving. And they would go, your choice or theirs? And I go, I think it's both, right? Because I didn't know if I was going to take any other offers or if they were just going to lay me off. By Wednesday, I was already interviewing for other jobs. And that was possible because I had built up that network, that I had been going to IGDA Chicago events for years, that I had been going to conferences, that I had been keeping in touch with people. And so literally I would call people up and they immediately were emailing with job opportunities and literally were going on interviews for companies and seeing what was going to happen. So, networking is one of the key things, and the branding part factors into it because I built up that brand as somebody that they knew that got stuff done, that was conscientious, that was there for people, that did stuff, that was involved, that just being at these events and talking, people could understand that I knew what I was talking about when it came to the things that I were doing. So it instantly made it that much easier to get me 3 cycles into the process. So pop quiz number 2. How many here of you who have business cards have business cards that you can write on? Okay, so here's a tip. If you get business cards, everybody likes to get the nice glossy laminated stuff. Either know that you can write on it up front or have one side that is not laminated. I'll go into the business card tip later, but if I can't write on your business card, I'm screwed, right? Like, that's even less of a chance that I'm going to talk to you later or that I'm going to know what to talk about. So make sure that your business cards can be written on. Okay, so let's go back to networking a little bit. So let's cover the basics. So do you know what this is? Good, use it. Do you know what this is? Great, use it. Do you know what that is?
Deodorant.
Great, use it. Okay, so now I'm glad we got that settled. So let's move up to and I'm not kidding about that stuff. Let's move up to the intermediate level of networking. Do you know what this is? Yeah, great, use it. Do you know what that is? Great, use that. Do you know what this is? Oh, please, 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 and thank you, use that. Okay, great. So now we've got the intermediate part of networking covered. So since that's so easy to master, let's move straight into the advanced material. Do you know what this is?
A file cabinet?
You better know that it's business cards. I've been pop quizzing you on this at the beginning of the talk. You better be using these. Everybody needs to have business cards. I am serious. So while I was completely and extremely serious about those last 7 tips, and I mean seriously, completely seriously pushing you on that, do not smell. Please, 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 please do not smell. I had a colleague who wanted my help getting a job. We met up at E3. We were talking about his resume. He smelled so bad that I was trying to sit back in my chair and turn it so that I was against the breeze that was going. It was horrible. And then he wanted me to recommend him to friends of mine for jobs. And there's no way I'm going to put my reputation on the line and recommend this guy to go in and sit across from my friends when he smells this bad. It is just not happening. Yeah?
Did you tell him to shower?
I told him afterward, not when we were in the middle of the conference.
So you're keeping up with the blunt part of your branding.
Oh yeah. I'm very blunt, as everybody knows. So we're gonna start getting to the actual more networking stuff. So building relationships, the strong ties, weak ties, and the dinner versus party dilemma. So networking is all about building relationships. For some, it's about getting to meet and connect with as many people as possible, even though you may not really get to know them. Those are the people who run around conferences handing out their business cards to everyone and anyone. They are the same people who are lions on LinkedIn. Lion stands for LinkedIn Open Networker. And anyone who has lion on their name or in their headline means that they'll automatically accept your connection request. The people that they have on their list are weak ties, meaning they are in their network, but they don't really know them very well. The other side of the coin is those people whose main goal is to meet and connect with as few people as possible, but get to know them really well. You may not have hundreds or thousands of people on your LinkedIn list, but the ones that you do, you know really well. I tend to be a strong ties person. In part, that is because I'm what you call a fake extrovert, right? So I can stand here and I can talk to you and we can go through the whole thing, and afterwards I'll stick around and answer questions and I'll shake hands and I'll hand out business cards, right? But that's, at the end of the day, that's draining to me, right? I'm more of an introvert, and there's a huge section of people in this industry that are actually introverts, but sometimes that doesn't always work out. So what I do is I go to the parties that I need to go to, I make my rounds, say hi to everybody that I know, do a little talking, and then I'll go and I'll have a dinner or lunch or breakfast with people that I know, especially at GDC when you get to see them like once a year. And I'll have a 3-hour dinner. My breakfast, I have an annual breakfast every time I go to GDC. I throw a breakfast, the last one had 30 people in it. We sat there for 4 hours, just talking, getting to know each other. And these are the people, the same people who, when I called them up and said, do you have my personal email, were like, how soon can you interview, right? And that's because I'm spending that quality time with them. I'm building up those ties. So speaking of events, let's get into how-tos of attending events. Attending professional events are kind of a necessary evil, but not only can they be useful, they can actually be really fun, like sitting for 4 hours at a breakfast at GDC, just laughing and goofing off with the people that you like. So, appearance. Dress nice, but not fancy unless the event calls for it, like with Night to Night. Don't forget the basics, which we already went over at the beginning. You guys should all know this by now. So if you're going to a conference like GDC, you're going to E3, whatever, you don't need to be in a full suit and tie or, a nice fancy dress, right? Unless you're one of those execs who's having to go to special meetings or whatever. That's not you. You can just show up in nice slacks and a top, in a lot of cases just a nice pair of jeans and a t-shirt. Try not to look too raggedy, right? Like you just walked out of your place without jarring or doing anything. Again, don't smell. But, do what you need to do to look nice, but you don't have to get really fancy. We're a very casual industry. Business cards. Go ahead.
Sorry, I have a question about the appearance. What's the general stance on wearing, branded stuff, like wearing a shirt for a game that you really like or something? Is that...
I don't know any developer who hasn't done that at least once.
Is it creepy if you're wearing a shirt for the people you're trying to interview with?
I did that 2 weeks ago. So yes.
So it all depends on how you do it, right? So like if you're a GDC and you just happen to be wearing like a Dragon Age shirt or whatever, right? And you're just a GDC, you're going about your day, but all of a sudden you run into one of the people from BioWare, right? So
David Gator himself.
right, David, Filtros, whatever, right? So you run into David Gator, right? Like you go to his talk, right? He just had a talk on sex and games, sexuality in games. So you go to his talk, and at the end, you're shaking your hands and you're wearing your Dragon Age shirt. Well, okay, you were wearing it the whole day anyways, right? You just happened to run into somebody from BioWare. Well, then that's kind of okay, right? Like if it shows interest or whatever, and he knows you're a fan. But if you're gonna specifically dress up in that just to go to that interview or whatever, that's a little like I wouldn't necessarily do that, but everybody has their own style for that.
How would they know the difference, though? Whether you just were happening to wear that shirt?
You
Like-
have a different energy meeting
creeping
somebody
them out.
if you
Yes.
dress up especially with
You keep doing this.
That's a dead giveaway also.
Everybody, they all want you to be enthusiastic, but they get really nervous if you look like you're a fanboy or a fangirl.
Well, and so what I'll say is like, so here's the difference. It's the difference between just being in the hall and happening to run into Dave Gator, or going to the Career Expo hall and literally walking up to their booth, right, to talk to a recruiter or to go to your interview. That's the difference, right? Like if you're literally going to talk to them, that makes it a little cheesy. But if you happen to be talking with friends and they come up to you, it's not going to matter, right? Because everybody's wearing those shirts, right? Especially at conferences, we're very laid back. So a lot of us are wearing that kind of stuff. So, you know, you just kind of have to play it by ear, but it depends what you're comfortable with. If you don't want to risk it, don't do it, right? Like, just wear a regular shirt. Or wear a shirt for somebody that there's no way you could run into them because the company's now defunct, like from 10 years ago, right? Or it's an old school game and it just shows that you're retro. So business cards. Seen a trend yet? After you leave a mixer, a session, whatever, go find a spot by yourself and write on the front or the back of each business card where you met them and what you talked about. Especially if you have anything memorable you can use to follow up later. Like, you both found out you loved playing Defender as a kid, right? Like, that was your big thing. So, grab their business card and be like, met Eugene, talked about Defender, right? At GDC after the IGDA event or whatever, right? So now, when you go back later, you're going to have something to follow up with more than just it was great to meet you at GDC. It was great to meet you at GDC. I really liked talking about Defender after we visited that 25th anniversary retro session, right? You have something to kind of connect them to your head because most likely they're going to get 100 other emails just like yours that say it was great to meet you at the event, right? This makes you stand out. This is also why I asked you if you have a business card that you can write on, because I want to be able to make that note, right? And if I can't do that, then I have to guess where it was that I met you or anything that we talked about. Because I don't have time to try and find another piece of paper or clip it to it. I don't need that. I just want to write on it. And the other thing I'll say is make them standard size. If you want to go a little smaller, fine. The mini cards, don't make big cards. Don't make ones with luggage tags on them. Don't make weird shaped ones. If it cannot fit in my wallet, in my business card holder, in my badge holder, I am most likely not going to keep it because I have nowhere to put it. And I don't have time to walk around with a bunch of business cards in my holder and one weird one in my hand, right? That makes it look like I'm trying to promote you to everybody I know. Yeah?
I don't suppose you know, like, the dimensions of a standard business card? Because I'm so unfamiliar with business cards that I wouldn't know that.
It's called standard business card.
That's all it is? Just the
Yeah.
standard?
So what I'll do is, for anybody that's new to business cards, if you go to vistaprint.com, they will actually show you templates and all that stuff. If you email me later, I will email you the specific dimensions and everything. I just have a file that I use every time that I update it, so I don't know it off the top of my head, but it's like 2x3 or whatever.
2 by 3.5.
Yeah. So so you can go a little smaller than that. Just don't go bigger, right? It drives me crazy. Yeah.
Like personal logos help out at all? Like
So
as far as catching the eye?
So here's what I usually tell people when you have a card that's a personal card, not a business, not like a company card, right? Like if you're an employer, if you're working for an employer and they give you a business card, there's pretty much not much you can do about it, right? Like you can't do your own thing. And their highlight is going to be on their actual company. So if I go back, so here you'll see this is my company card. So the biggest thing that you have is the DDD logo, right? Because this is more about my company, and then anybody else that works for me is going to be on the right-hand side. So you can do a personal logo, but I'm going to tell you not to make it the main focus, or have it be like on the back, right? Like have it be an auxiliary piece to it. If you're doing your own personal business card, the biggest thing needs to be your name, right? Then you're probably going to want to say something like what you do. Like I'm an artist, an audio monkey for the two in their house, something like that. And then you want your contact number and an email or website if you have one. And you want them to be in the order generally that you prefer to be contacted in, right? So if you hate getting phone calls and voicemails, either don't put your number on there or put it at the bottom, right? Like put your email up top. The one exception to this sometimes is people will do something where it looks better aesthetically, like if you go small, bigger, then you might change it, but your name should be the biggest thing. And then the biggest deal to me of all is that this needs to be readable. If I have to go home and I'm looking through a card and I really wanted you for a position that I have open with a friend of mine, but I can't read your name, I can't read your email, anything, because you decided to get all creative and threw in lots of art and did this really funky font and papyrus, lobster, Comic Sans, who knows? You went all crazy, right? Well, then it does know it's the equivalent to not having a business card, because I have no way to reach you. Like I have to guess, and I don't want to guess, right? Like I don't want to have to do that. I don't have that time because I got 100 other business cards that I can read. So I'm going to start with them, and then maybe if you're lucky, I'll get back to it. Yeah.
As a game designer, I feel like I should, I've been told that there is no such thing as an entry-level position for game designers. So would for the job title or description thing, would I put designer / programmer or something like that? Or should I focus on just listing one?
Okay, so everybody will debate the whole there's no entry level for X. There are entry level designers. In a lot of cases, they're considered associate or junior. There are some companies where they'll actually have entry-level designers, and it's because of the fact that they're small companies, right? So it's not like an EA where you're going to have 15 levels of designer before you even get to touch the game or whatever. So especially now that we have a big indie scene that people are making games on their own, there are entry-level designers. The key there is you have to prove that you're actually a designer, which I'll get into a little bit, but you need to have a game that I can play, right?
Right.
So it's not that it doesn't exist at all. It's just one of those diamond in the rough things. You have to look for it and you have to want it. But if you really want to be a designer, just say you're a designer, right? Don't tell me what you think I want to hear. Tell me what you are, right? Tell me what you are doing. And it's fine to put programmer on there if you're actually a really good programmer. But if you put programmer on your card, I'm going to expect you to be able to program, right? And so if you can't really do that, or if you're just a scripter, just leave it off, right? Don't lie, don't fudge, don't make me feel like you can do stuff that you can't, right? Because if I find out that that's not really the case, then you get knocked down a notch, right? As far as how I look for you. And every time you do that, it makes it that much harder for you to get up and get that job. Yeah?
How specific should you be? Because I'm a programmer, but I'm really better with Java and C# on Unity than I am with C++, but I know that C++ could be important to the industry. Should I go specific there, or just say programmer?
So here's the rule of thumb. You go specific if you're trying to specifically get that job, right? If you are only wanting to find Java or Unity programming jobs, right? That's what you want to do, then put it on there, right? It calls it out. But if you want to be flexible, if you want to have options, just say programmer, right? Because it gives you something to talk about. You can always go into more detail later after you talk. I just want the basics, right? I want to be able to grasp an essence of what you are. All right, so icebreakers.
Nope.
And we'll have plenty of time for questions later, and I will be staying for as long as you want.
I was just going to ask you about your elevator pitch, because
That's
I was hoping you'd skip over it.
No. We just moved back to show the business card. So elevator pitch. Does anybody here know what an elevator pitch is? Okay, good. So, an elevator.
Manuel better be putting your arms up.
Finally, that's what Tom teaches. So, the concept of an elevator pitch is it's a quick way to explain who you are, what your company is, what your product is, whatever it is. And it's called an elevator pitch because the theory is you need to be able to explain it in that 30 to 60 seconds from the time you're at the top of like the 9th story down to the bottom of the lobby when you have to get out, right? So you only have that short amount of time to get your pitch across. So what you need is an elevator pitch for yourself. So when you get the inevitable, what do you want to do, whatever, tell me about yourself, you have that quick 30, 60, whatever second pitch that you can just rattle off, right? Don't make it sound too robotic, like you have this memorized, but so you can just kind of rattle it off. You can hit the key points, you can get it in, you can make them want to keep talking. The goal is that when you get to the lobby and the doors open up, you want that person to have been intrigued enough to follow you out and talk to you, right? Or to ask you for a call or ask you for your business card. So you want that elevator pitch, you want to kind of define it now, and you want to practice it. So the next time you're actually with somebody, you can just go, okay, that's what I do, right? Or that's what my company does, or this is what my game is doing, or, you know, like a Kickstarter pitch, for those of you on Kickstarter. You gotta have that pitch ready to explain what your game is and why they should go back in. Does that kind of help you out there? You're writing notes. Is that okay? You got kind of an idea? Okay.
It's what I thought. Just
So icebreakers, do's and don'ts. So if you remember me talking about how a lot of us are under NDA and we can't really talk about what we're working on, or even games that have already shipped and we still can't say anything. So this can get kind of tricky when you're actually at conferences or you're in Mixer talking to people. Because it puts them into so don't ask someone what they do or what they are working on, right? Because it can put them in an awkward situation. Maybe they're under NDA and they can't say anything more than, well, I can't tell you, right? Or not allowed to talk about it. Well, that kind of stops the conversation right there, right? Like, you got nothing to go on after that. It'll just kind of kill the conversation. Do ask someone if they have anything they're working on that they can talk about. And what that does is it allows them to go, man, no, I have not, like, I still can't talk about it or whatever, right? And you can commiserate on that, not just a quick, no, I can't talk about it, right? It gives you something to talk about. Or ask them what they're currently passionate about, right? And then you can find out more of that personal stuff that gives you that memorable thing you can write on the back of the business card. See how this all ties back together? You can write on the back of the business card to follow up with them later, right? So do what you can to do it open-ended and don't kill the conversation. So some more event tips, getting started. So the first thing you need to do is decide what events are right for you to go to and which of those you can get to. Besides the big ones like GDC, there are lots of events for lots of different reasons. Even here in Chicago, there's the IGA Chicago events, there's Indie City Games, there's Industry Night, there's game jams, there's hackathons, there's other meetup groups, etc. Once you've selected an event, then you can plan better ahead on how you're going to network. What you need to keep in mind and do for a one-night event, for like an IGA chapter event, is totally different than what you need to do for a week-long conference. Because if you see somebody for one night and you go home, great, right? Like you got your little script, you do it, you get in there, you know what you want, you leave. But if you're at a conference and you do something wrong at the start on Monday, and you got to run into that person on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday, and by Friday you just want to hide in your hotel and never show your face again, right? Like, you want to have more stuff to talk to them about. You want to know how to follow up. So if on Monday you find out that they are looking for a programmer, and you know a great programmer, when you run into them Tuesday, you can be like, oh yeah, I remember you said you're looking for a programmer. I have this great friend. I talked to him. He's actually looking for a job. Can I give you his information, right? So figure out what your goal is when you're networking. And like I said, the tips for fake extroverts like myself, or if you're just new or scared of networking, if you're not a mingler, right, like you don't really care for small talk, and if you're not the go out and get drunk every night kind of person, which they're there, there's a couple things that you can do to help yourself out. So the first thing is practice some of the do's and don'ts that I'll get to at the end of the section. Find buddies to go with you. who you can partner up with, but who will also push you to meet new people or try new things. Because you don't want to spend the whole night just talking to the one person you already know, right? You want to go talk to other people. Here's another thing you can do is when you get into the room and you're like, oh my god, there's a lot of people and I have no idea what to do. Just start sidling over to a group of people that are talking and just stand there and listen to what they're talking about. And if it seems like an open conversation, right, like anybody can come in and join, and it's not like these are all the people from a company and they're talking about their project or preparing for their talk, just kind of listen, and then when you have something not stupid to say, join in, right? Like don't make an idiot of yourself, but join in, see how they respond to it, and have that conversation. And then just as easily, when you're done, just kind of sidle back off, or I gotta go meet my buddy over there, right? Like that buddy that you came with gives you that, oh yeah, I gotta go see that person, right? Like they're waving me over or whatever. And especially if it's a big party, they have no idea if that person actually waved to you or not, so just do it, right? Take it in small doses. And if you walk over there and you aren't at all interested in them, then you just walk away and you go somewhere else. Until you find a group that's talking about something you're interested in. And then you can connect with them, right? It's that strong ties, weak ties, right? So don't waste your time trying to talk to every single person if you're really not into it, right? If you're not enjoying, if you don't know what they're talking about, don't make a fool of yourself. Just walk away and leave. It's a big party. Everybody's just kind of mingling. Do what you need to do. My biggest tip for those that are kind of scared or new or introverts like myself, look for the other people in the room who look just as scared and alone as you do. And go talk to them, because they will be glad you did, because somebody else just went and talked to them, right? I was, this last GC, I was walking through the Women in Games party, and I had, like, my mentee and friends with, and we were doing the rounds, and I passed this gal who was standing at the wall with one of her coworkers, and I just happened to smile at her, and she got the courage to come up and say hi to me, and ask who I was, and we did the introduction. Turns out she worked for a company that one of my best friends works at. It was a whole thing. I was like, oh, right? And she's like, well, your smile is just so warm. I thought I'd take a chance, blah, blah, blah. She's like, I don't really know anybody here. And I was like, don't worry, I got you covered. So I brought her over to a whole group of my friends. And I was like, hey, everybody, like you to meet my new best friend, Peggy, right? And I was like, Peggy, this is Brian, and this is Neil, and this is like, and I introduced her to the set of friends that I happen to know. And I'm like, she's kind of new here, she doesn't really know anybody, so I have to go make her feel welcome. And I left her there, and I'm leaving, and she's just chit-chatting away with everybody. Followed up at the conference, she eventually got to know all three of them, they all had drinks together, it was a whole deal. And it's all because she took the chance, right? So you just need to take the chance. Especially if you're not really into networking or mingling or whatever. Just go find somebody that looks just as scared as you and go talk to them. And also, conference guides and notes. So I'll give you a couple links later, but learn from others. There are many of us in the industry who have been going to GDC and E3 and all this stuff for years, right? And so many of us post on our Facebooks and our Twitters, we post on our blogs, little tips and tricks to survive conferences, how to do stuff, and although we may not match your style, pick and choose the bits that work for you, right? Like, come up with what works. So if the person you're reading is I don't really go to sessions, but I stay up all night and see how long I can last going to every single party, well then maybe don't do that, right? Maybe you speak more to the person who prefers to go to as many sessions as possible and checks in early, right? Because they want to be there, figure out what your purpose is. Standard, safety, and support. And I'm just trying to figure out how to get my mouse to show back up. Let's try that. Oh, and of course it's going to do that. Hold on. There's my mouse. Okay, so the truth of the matter here, and this is an important slide for me to talk to you guys about, is that everyone is different. And because we all have different tastes, styles, etc. What one person finds humorous, another person may find boring. What one person thinks is entertaining, another person may find totally offensive. South Park and stuff are really good at doing that and testing everybody's boundaries. So there are also things that just kind of happen by virtue of everyone trying to be a decent human being, but unfortunately, we're not all decent human beings. And when you throw alcohol into the mix, sometimes things get a little hairy. So we all have our own restrictions, we all have our own ideas, values, whatever, or lack thereof, due to cultural and religious aspects, due to just your personal style, introverts versus extroverts, or even just food allergies, right? So going to a meal and you can't eat the food, which I totally relate to. So everybody's got their own issues. So there's a few things to keep in mind. The first is you need to set ground rules for yourself. So especially at week-long conferences, you need to kind of set a rule for yourself. How late am I willing to stay out? How many events am I going to try and hit each night? What kind of events am I okay going to? So if you're not a club person or that makes you feel weird, then don't go to the events that are clubs, right? Go to the ones that are just at restaurants. How much will you have to drink? And who will be with you at these events? The second thing you need to do is know your limits. It does you absolutely no good to stay up late partying at a conference if the next day you look tired, you look ill, you're late to your meetings, your interviews, whatever, a talk you wanted to see. If you're going to drink alcohol, then decide how much you think you can drink and still act appropriately and be safe, and then cut that at least in half. And if you are not a drinker, I don't drink at all, don't feel like you have to join in with the heavy drinkers. So get a drink get one drink at the event and sip it all night. Maybe get a dark cola, right, and ask for it in a drink class. So unless they taste or smell it, they don't know. I like root beer. Some bars actually have bottles of root beer, like IBC, and so it looks just like a normal beer bottle, right? But if you're gonna drink, get one drink and sip it. You don't want to take the chance, like the gal that I told you about earlier, that you're gonna say or do something that's pretty much gonna kill all your chances in the industry. And then number 3, you want to make sure that you're safe. So if it's in a not so nice area, welcome to the Tenderloin of San Francisco at GDC. Or you're going for the first time somewhere, get a buddy, or make sure you know how to get to and from the place safely and with ease. Whether it's knowing the name of a taxi company, or you use Uber if you're in the right location, or you have a friend or somebody that's going to pick you up, figure that out. And if someone is making you uncomfortable, or the atmosphere is hostile or unwelcoming, if you feel unsafe, then you need to leave. If you can tell someone who's harassing you to stop, great. But not everybody in that moment can feel okay doing that. The next step would be to tell the organizers that something's going on or you're having issues. Look at the events ahead of time. A lot of them will have acceptable behavior policies or things you can do if you're having issues. This is also where having a buddy comes from, because then you can kind of do the, oh my god, help me, right? Like, this is not a good situation. But no matter what, get yourself safely out of that situation. And, oh, I have to go with my friend to this other event, bye, right? If someone tries to tell you that you had no reason to be offended, that their actions are just how it is these days, or even worse, that you need to do something that you're uncomfortable with to get a job or get into the industry, these are not the people that you should be hanging out with. They do not matter. It does not care, right? My friends and the people that I mentor at DC, they know that at any time, day or night, they can text me or they can call me, and I and my friends will come and get them, or we will stand by them and get them out of a situation. So find that buddy system, find that support. This is really key. Nobody should be made to feel uncomfortable or unwelcome. This industry should be having a community, especially when so many of us were in the not welcomed people when we were in school, right? So now is not the time to turn that back around. So some general networking do's and don'ts. Networking do's. Talk to your mentor. If you have a mentor, they can be very useful here, and I'll cover more of that in the mentoring section. Read advice from others in the industry, which I'll point you to a couple blogs in a second. Lots of helpful devs have networking advice to share. not just for actually at conferences, but just in general, and on their social networks. Keep track of your contacts. So figure out how you're going to have a list, a database, whatever, of your contacts somewhere, the people that you met. Whether it's in Gmail or Outlook contacts, whether you use Plaxo, you have a spreadsheet, you do it in Evernote, something, but back it up, even if it's in the cloud, right? Even Google can fail. Don't rely on them to have it. Export it regularly. Make sure you have it so that when you need to get a hold of somebody, you know how to do it. And lastly, practice, practice, practice. It's just like everything else. The best way to get better at something is to just keep trying to do it, right? And you're at a place to practice right now. So when we're over, talk to people, swap business cards, practice an elevator pitch. And right now, since you all know that you're all just getting used to this, they're like, hey, I'd like to try out this elevator pitch on you, right? Because they're not going to feel weird about it. Just go for it. Okay, so now it's networking don'ts. These are kind of crucial. Don't go hot and cold. So this is the on-again, off-again networking, right? This is the person who doesn't network until they need a job. And then they're all talking to everybody at the same time, right? Don't do that, because this is about building up relationships long-term. Even the ones that do weak ties, you're still trying to keep in touch with everybody and get that relationship to happen. Do not bash games or people. I've had people who sit there bashing a game to my face, not knowing that I actually worked on that game, or that I have best friends who worked on that game and who spent years slaving away. And even though we all know it's the suckiest game ever, it's still our baby, right? Like, how dare you tell me that my game sucked, right? So you have no idea necessarily the background of that person that's in front of you. So you don't want to do that, because you're going to put them on the offense. Now, if you want to have a critical discussion about games and you want to talk about, well, as a designer or UI designer, I probably would have made this color or moved this to this corner, that's fine, but don't just be like, that game sucks, it's the worst game ever, I can't believe somebody made that game, right? Like, that's not good. And don't bash people. For as large as this industry is very small. You guys have heard of the 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon? You know that concept? Where you can take any actor and within 6 movies or 6 TV shows, you can figure out somebody who worked with Kevin Bacon with him. Well, it's the same thing in the game industry, right? Like, I am 6 degrees away from anybody in this industry. And that's because I have those strong ties and I have the connections, like a Brendan, John Romero, or whatever, where they know their part, this guy knows their part, and so I can get to just about anybody you want. And it's the same thing when you're looking for a job. We will ask our networks, be like, hey, does anybody know somebody who worked at this company? And we will find out about you. Don't send crappy LinkedIn or friend requests. If you don't make it clear how I know you, then you can forget about it. And I have a post on my Sheri Rubin site that I will tell you about later, but it's literally the reasons why I'll ignore your LinkedIn post. So if you call me a friend, and I've never even heard your name, I know it's the way to get around not having an email, but I will decline that request. If you just give me the standard, I'd like to add you to my professional network, most likely going to decline the request unless it's somebody I know really well, and I know they're just trying to get everything up to date, right? So add something to it. Tell me why you want to get in touch with me. Tell me where we met. Tell me a project that we worked on together. Something to jog my memory that makes me go, yeah, that wasn't actually a bad person. I'm willing to take a chance and add them to my network. And lastly, don't forget to follow up. Does absolutely no good to go to a conference and walk home with 200 business cards if you don't do anything with them. You're wasting trees at that point, right? So do your follow-ups. Keep in touch through social networks, through emails. It's that recurring reminder that I told you about. Figure out how you want to do that.
Sure. Can I add something?
Mm-hmm.
This is in the bash games, people. This is something a lot of you have heard this. I'm gonna pass it on. And it's something that came up that people don't think about. Don't bash your own stuff. Okay. We had an incident a few years ago where we were having an industry night here at the school, and there were some seniors who were talking about their project, and all they did was complain about how hard it was, how hard the tools were to work with, blah, 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 and listening to them was a producer from NetherRealm. guess what well they poisoned. We all know it's hard. We all know it's tricky. We all know it's difficult. We all know the tools don't work right. We all know there's an asshole on the team.
Always. There's always this one.
What we want to know is how did you succeed?
But more importantly, we want to know that you can just deal with it, right? Like, if you're complaining just at a mixer, oh my god, I am expecting the worst of you. If I have to listen to you complain for 5 minutes, and now in my head I'm thinking, what would that be like 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year? Like, that's not happening, right? Like, a little bit of complaining's okay, but seriously, like, no. We'll get to questions in a second, so I'm just gonna put you on hold. So yeah, don't bash games, don't bash people, be a nice person, right? Golden rule, do unto others, the whole deal. You guys, the basics. Remember that manners slide that I talked about? Yeah, so do your please and thank yous while you're not smelling. So, this is the most important tip of all in the networking section that I'm going to give to you today. And it's, don't be this guy. Seriously, nothing will make me walk away from you faster, except if you didn't do the basics, right? Like the smell or whatever. Then if I just see you walking around an event, trying to ask everyone for a job. Do you have an opening? I need a job. Can you help me? I need a job. Can you help me? Oh my god, no. Yuck, bye, it's over, right? You're like, because you should have that figured out ahead of time. You shouldn't be asking people for a job unless you're literally at a career fair, right? Like, if you're literally going to a job fair, fine. Ask them if they have openings for designers or artists or whatever. But if you're just sitting there at an industry night, chit-chatting in a bar, that is not the time to go around asking everybody for a job, because they're going to remember that. And like I said, this industry is small. So we will go back to our office and be like, oh my god, you should have seen this noob who was walking around asking everybody for a job. It was so ridiculous, right? And then the next time, like, they come through, they're like, that's the guy, right? Like, that's the guy who's annoying, right? We remember this, yeah?
So what would be like the grace period? Like, obviously...
And your company was one of the ones that I was looking at, so this is the key. Don't ask them for a job. Be like, I would really love it if you could tell me more about what it's like to work at NetherRealm, right? And it's basically an informational interview, right? So just engage them, find out what the company's like, get them to talk to you, right? Open up, and you'd be like, oh, you guys use Maya? Well, I use Max, but I've been learning Maya on the side, right? Like, go through the whole back and forth and just have an interview. And then you can do the follow-up later, right? See what they say, see how receptive they are. You know, even if you can't follow, you know, the nonverbal learning signals, you can still kind of tell when somebody doesn't want anything to do with you, right? So just figure out how the communication's going, and then go from there. But have a bit of back and forth. Maybe it comes up right away, right? I've had friends who literally started talking to somebody, like, oh my god, I have to get your resume, right? Like, we're totally looking for an engineer. And then it's get the card, and then you're like, hey, we've talked about this engineering position you have open. Sure, then the very first follow-up that you do, totally acceptable, right? But try and make it friendly, don't push for it right away. You can be assertive, but just don't nag, right? Like, I don't want to get an email every 2 days going, did you see my resume? Did you see my resume? Did you see it? No. That's almost as bad as the guy walking around the conference, right? And when you are there, don't walk around actually trying to hand out your resume. This is why you have business cards. I don't want to see your resume, right? Unless we're at that career fair again. I don't want to see it. Don't carry it around, right? Give me your business card, and then we'll talk later, right? And if I'm interested, then we'll look at your resume. But don't go around trying to hand people your resume, especially at mixers and week-long conferences. If it's 8 o'clock at night and I've got 2 more events to go to, what am I going to do with your resume? Besides use it as a napkin, right? Like, I got nothing to do with it, right? So you just wasted that opportunity. But I hope that kind of helps you, but you kind of have to... There's not a set rule, right? Like, you have to see how that conversation goes first, and then kind of take it from there.
I just want to kind of add to what you're saying here. You also don't want to be the guy that's, like, godly eyeing this other person. So, meaning, like, fanboy. Yeah.
Fanboy.
They're no Robin Williams. They're just as much of a person as you are. They deserve just as much expect.
Well, and I think that the key thing is you have to understand that we're all trying to do the same thing you are, right? So it doesn't matter how high up or how low we're at. Like when we're at GUC, there's a great Mike Bithell who did Thomas Was Alone. Anybody here know what Thomas Was Alone is? He just recently wrote this blog post about cliques and conferences. And he was talking about how he was kind of that guy, right? Not this specific guy, but he was like that guy, right? Where he saw a bunch of people that he really idolized and he was like, oh my god, I can't wait to talk to them, whatever. And they just kind of like shut him down and they just focused on their own little group that was talking. It was this circle. And he was really offended, right? But then he realized, no, these are just people that, like some of us, like this is the one time a year we get to see a person, right? And so if I have the choice between spending 5 minutes talking to somebody that I deeply care about and I haven't seen in a year, or listening to you ask me for a job, I'm going to take this person every day of the week. And don't get me wrong, I will be open, I will be talking to you, but sometimes it's just, that's what it is, right? Like you're just engrossed in a conversation, and it's not necessarily something you can bring others to in it. So don't always take offense, but just understand that that's what happens, and that we're all just people, right? Like, we all just want to catch up with our friends, we all want to see what's going on. When I'm at conferences, I talk more with my contacts and my network about personal stuff than I would ever do development stuff, right? We're talking about who just got married, about their new kids, where they're moving to, what their garden's like, right? Like, did they finally finish watching all of Breaking Bad? Who knows, right? So, like, you know, because you don't want to, like, spoilers, people, right? Like, so, if a big show just ended, you don't want to, like, say anything if they're a Netflix watcher and they have to wait, right? So, you know, you just kind of play it by ear, but just, you know, we're all humans. When I was at GDC once, we had Will Wright walk into our quality of life roundtable. And at the end of it, I was like, you know, I'm going to go talk to Will because I'd like to get some quotes from him for the quality of life sake. And my coworker got up with me. He's like, you're not seriously going to talk to Will Wright, are you? Oh my God, that's Will Wright. How can you go? I'm like, it's just Will Wright, right? Like, he's a person just like everybody else. Like, he walked into this room on his own 2 feet, just like a real, like nobody carried him in on a chair, right? Like,
Just Will, right?
it's just Will. And so I went up and I talked to him and I was like, hey, really like some stuff you said, like to get involved, blah, blah, blah. We swapped business cards. He has a great business card, by the way. We swapped business cards. It was great, right? And then we left. My friend's like, oh my God, I can't believe you just talked to Will Wright. Okay. Thanks, right? Like, should I yay? Is that something I'm supposed to celebrate, right?
You can take a picture with me now.
So, yeah, so I touched Will Wright. Oh my God, get my autograph, right? So, no, so, yeah, we're just, you know, we're just people, but don't be this guy. This is key. Okay, so, networking action items. So here's stuff you should do following this talk. So the first one, oh my God, I hope you guys have done this already. Master the basic intermediate steps. So you don't have that mastered, seriously, don't screw the rest of the talk. Fix that first. Worry about the rest of it later. I don't even care if you don't have a business card at that point. If you don't have that, like, then just deal with it. Number 2, decide on your style of networking. So are you the person who just wants to connect with anyone and everyone and just see what happens? Or are you the kind of person who, when you meet somebody you're interested in, you want to forgo the entire rest of the party and just have a half-hour chat with them and see what happens, right? So figure out what your style is, figure out what you're okay with. Map out your networking areas. So do you want to go to lots of events? Do you want to be on Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram? Or you just want to be on one, right? Like, I just do Twitter, I don't do Facebook, right? Or I only do Facebook, I don't want to do Twitter, I can't handle 140 characters or whatever, right? Figure that out. And then create your networking game plan. So do you need to join LinkedIn? Do you need reminders to talk to people? Do you need to update your business cards? Have you got the trend yet there? If you don't have a plan going in, it'll make it that much harder to be successful, right? Like if you don't know what your goal is, then you're just going to flail in the wind and hope that something happens that works out in your favor. Okay, so resources. So it's not totally self-promotion, but whatever. It's my personal site. So SheriRubin.com is my personal website. It's not my company website. And SheriForIGDA.org is the site that I blog about a lot of the stuff that I do for the IGDA. So on SheriRubin.com, you'll see stuff like my reasons that I will ignore your LinkedIn request posts, about how to introduce and connect people, where I literally walk you through how to ask for an introduction and how to handle it appropriately. So I have people that want me to introduce them to somebody, and I'll be like, well, here's the information I need, right? So that's in there. Sheri for IGDA.org. I work a lot with the IGDA Scholars Program, and so for GDC this last year, I just started throwing tips into the Facebook group, right? Like, don't go where it's not safe, so avoid the tenderloin, right? Or wear comfortable shoes, drink lots of water, right? Like, basics and not so basics. Like, here's what you need to do ahead of time, here's what you should do at the show. And so put it all together in a blog post. So you'll see like 26 plus tips for how to get through like a GDC or an E3. So then the next set is Jamil and Sheri Granaray's post. So Jamil Maldina has worked for, he used to actually run GDC, but worked for EA Partners, worked for Gree and all that stuff, now has his own startup. Him and a buddy of his have a blog post, and he actually wrote the guide to GDC, which is based on his version. So you can actually read tips there about how he approaches the conference. Sheri Granaray, she does a little bit of conference stuff, but on her blog, you'll actually see a bunch of networking 101 posts. So she'll tell you why you might want to consider being on Twitter, or what you need to do with LinkedIn. So even the basics, not necessarily just at events. And then there's the map items checklist, which we will get to as we get further along. Okay, so obligatory topic slide number 3. We're going to get into professional development. So professional development is another crucial piece of the puzzle that is getting in and staying in the industry. You constantly have to be learning and growing and improving yourself in your craft, because it's going to look good on your resume. So here is why it matters, why it's so important to do this. You have to keep improving yourself because the industry is constantly changing. We're about to go through another generation of consoles, right? So Xbox One, PS4, right? So the skills you had working on a PS2 may not be so useful anymore, right? Now we have an iPad besides just an iPod, or Android comes out and they're a new player in the market, or you even want to go to Windows Phone or BlackBerry Playbook, who knows, right? Facebook's here instead of MySpace, so now you got to work with Facebook's rules, right? You constantly have to deal with that. The engines that are changing, the new languages that are coming up. It keeps you relevant and valuable. So I have a friend who was on the chopping block for a company. It's just a programmer. And then he found out that they were going to attempt to do some Facebook games, and he had been learning Flash, and he had been learning a bit of Facebook code. That's what kept him in his job, right? They got rid of somebody else because he could do what they needed in their new way of business. So it keeps you relevant, it keeps you valuable. It's one less thing that's going to make you, it's one more thing that's going to make you get that job or keep that job. It increases your credibility. So you're staying on top of and being able to talk about current areas in your craft. You can sit at a GDC roundtable and join in the debate of Python versus Lua, which, oh my god, that debate, I thought people were going to come to blows on that one. People get really passionate about the stuff that they do. It gives you more chance to get speaking gigs, to get deals, right? Like when you want to get your indie game published. It does a whole lot of stuff for you, including it offers you more options. So if you learn a new language, that's one more job that you qualify for, that you didn't qualify for before, right? You can get more freelance jobs because people know you, people recognize you, they know that you can do your stuff. I'll get to questions in a little bit. You know, it gets you more stuff that you can handle. So if you're not sure what's important to learn, there are some places that you can look at to help you find out what you need to do to develop yourself. So the first one is the basics, right? Your boss or your management. So if you're not sure what you need to do, talk to your boss. Where do you want to see me in a year, 3 years, 5 years, right? Like, where's this company headed, right? If your boss or management is starting to talk about how we're shifting away from Facebook and we're going to do just online games, well, don't focus so much on learning the Facebook stuff. Worry about the web part, right? Worry about the online part. Or maybe you're going to screw that all together and you're going to go do mobile games, right? Well, now you got a whole new set of stuff to learn. But if you've talked to them ahead of time, you know what you need to do. You can start practicing that now. Talk to those in your desired job. So if you're a programmer and you want to be a lead programmer, go find and talk to other lead programmers. Ask them what it is that's necessary to do their job. What is the skills that they had to learn? What do they need to keep in mind? What are the resources, right? That's the best way to find it out. If you're a student, you want to be a designer, go talk to other designers, right? Find out how they get in. Find out what they're learning. Find out what their focuses are. Learn from them. Look at trade press articles or surveys. So although Game Developer Magazine is no longer around, there's a lot of press outlets that will actually do surveys, and they'll talk about, here are the best used tools, right? Or Unity is now the most used engine, or something like that, right? See where the trends are, see where people are going. Look at the guides and surveys that professional associations come out with. So look at an ACM, an IEEE, a PMI, see what their best practices are, see where things are heading. And then you could have started seeing years ago that everybody's starting to head towards Agile and Scrum for a lot of projects. So now you can start learning about Agile and Scrum before it even becomes necessary. And then when you're going to get a job and they want to know if you know how to do Scrum or Agile, you already know it, right? And lastly, look at current job descriptions. And this is what I'm going to say to people who actually have a job, which generally makes no sense to people when I say that. But even when you have a job, look at the job descriptions for the position you have right now, right? Because maybe you're working in a house that just does C, C++, right? And every single job description you're seeing for programmers right now is all about JavaScript, right? Well, then you need to start learning some JavaScript on the side, right? Like, go home and learn JavaScript, right? So that gives you kind of an idea of where things are going right now and the stuff that you need to make sure that you're at least knowing, or that you know that you don't know that, so what are you going to do to make yourself different? Okay, pop quiz number 3. So how many here have business cards that you can write on and that are with you right now? All right, we've got a few hands. We're losing them as we go. We're losing them. Okay, so sharpen the saw tools number 1. Sharpen the saw is a concept from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey, and it's about basically refining your craft, getting yourself better. You got to keep the blade sharp, right? Otherwise, it's useless. So there are lots of tools, groups, etc. that can help you along the way to keep developing yourself. So the first is company resources. So, and this even counts for schools. Some schools have game libraries, or they have documentation, wikis, they have webinars. Lots of companies will have like a company-wide subscription to GDC Vault, where you can watch like 8,000 different talks and videos of stuff that interests you. Some of them will have intranets and wikis. Some of them will do classes that you can sign up for, right? Look at the workshops that your schools offer if you're a student. Take advantage of that stuff because it's free and it's there, right? Online libraries, trainings, etc. So GDC Vault, W3 Schools, a lot of the engines and tools have their own tutorials and guides up on their websites. Go to Code Academy or Khan Academy. Go to virtual and physical courses. So David Allen, Franklin Covey, Starterly, even going back to school. I'll give you a resource later, but there are a ton of universities, Stanford, MIT, UC Berkeley, Harvard, Yale, etc., who have online classes that you can audit for free. So you can get a Ivy League school course for free, do it from your home. Take advantage of that stuff, right? Find out where you can do it. Look to your professional associations. Look at what IGA has available. ACM, PMI if you're a producer. If you're a producer, you need to be looking at PMI stuff, by the way. IEEE, they all have best practices docs, guides. They host their own conferences. They do webinars. Some even have certifications, like Scrum Master or PMP, which is really fancy, and it looks good on your resume. Last, go to development events, like this one. Go to SIGGRAPH, go to GDC, go to Star East, go to game jams, go to hackathons, go to global congresses, whatever you need to do, just keep learning, just keep growing. If you need more ideas, you can also try dev groups. So, Indie City Games, there's meetup groups, there's IGA chapters and SIGs and committees. Create one with your friends or your colleagues, right? So, put a bunch of people together that you like, start making a game on your own. Or even just having like a once a month chat where you guys talk about the games that you're playing, things that you like, trends you're seeing in the industry. Because start getting together, know what everybody's talking about. Even go to co-working spaces, right? There's a lot of co-working co-op spaces that are springing up, especially in Chicago. And right there, you're surrounded by people that are making games, that love games, that know their craft, that are excelling, that will help each other, learn each other. Look at online groups and forums. So artists, DeviantArt, right? Programmers, Stack Overflow, right? Which programmers, hopefully you get that. TigSource, right? Especially for indies. GitHub. GitHub is almost basically the equivalent to DeviantArt for programmers, right? Look at other dev groups or professional associations on Facebook, LinkedIn, that have websites. Look for specific programs or groups. So if you feel like you're going to need to talk a lot and do speaking gigs or hold meetings or try and sell your company or whatever, go to Toastmasters, right? Like, find the thing that helps you do what you need to do. Look at the IGDA Scholars Program. I will get into this more later, but anybody who is a student right now who is not looking to apply for the GDC scholarships, bad, right? So igda.org/scholars, and I'll go into this later. But do that, right? Instant access to ways to develop yourself. Same with Game Mentor Online. I'll get into that more too. Scrum Alliance. You make games on your own or with friends. Make apps, volunteer, read books, blogs, listen to podcasts, watch videos, listen to creative media just to get your brain going and start getting ideas and to expand your horizons and broaden your knowledge and all that stuff. Or look to experts and find mentors. Practice your craft, challenge yourself. There's so much more you can do. You just need to use your imagination and figure out what works best for you and keep an eye out for those opportunities when they come by, just like this one. And just keep going. There's not a single person that I know in this industry, even with decades of experience or having worked on multi-million-dollar blockbusters on their bios, who is not constantly learning, growing, and challenging themselves to get better. You have to be there learning right along with them. Brenda Romero has been in the industry for over 30 years, and she was just here in June with John, and she was talking about how she's just learning to code. She's trying to code. She's learning new engines, right? She's got 30 years of experience. She doesn't need to do a damn thing if she doesn't want to, but she's doing it because she knows she has to go forward. She's not really making RPG PC games anymore, so now she's got to learn how to make games on Facebook or Google Plus if they don't kill it. You know, but she's challenging herself, right? She's having to learn to keep growing. She wants to get better at her craft. She wants to know how to talk to programmers and not make them start talking gobbledygook and tell her that she can't do what she wants, right? She wants to call their bullshit flag. I do that all the time. So here's some action items. So do a self-assessment and a brainstorm. So get down in a concrete form somewhere. I love Evernote and stuff like that. What your skills are, what your talents are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses, what kind of habits do you have? Do you have any goals, right? Like, I just want to be an artist for the rest of my life. I want to be a lead artist. I want to be an art director. I want to run my own studio. What are your goals? Figure that out. What do you want to do? What do you need to do? Map out where you want to go. So now that you have all that reference material, you know, try and look at 1, 3, and 5 years down the road. And where do you want to be at those points? What do you need to do to get there? What do you not know? What experience do you need, right? So if being a lead of something means you need to be able to do X, can you do that now? And if you can't, what do you need to do to be able to say, I can do X? Create an inventory of potential resources. So it's the who, it's the where, it's the what that will get you the tools, the skills, the habits that you need. Who can you check in with to see that you're progressing? Who is in your support network that can help you and find you and move you along your path, right? I have my tech expert, my web expert, my friend Andrew. So anytime WordPress is just driving me crazy, I just put him on IM, like, help me out, right? And he walks me through and he debugs the problem with me, right? And you get it done. But I have that support network, I've built it up. And last, you create a development game plan. So take all that info that you've now put together from the first 3 sections and put it into a coherent plan of stuff that you're going to do and accomplish. And make them, and have SMART goals. Does everybody know what a SMART goal is?
Goal that is easily.
Yeah, so SMART is an acronym, and depending on who you talk to, they use slightly different words. But basically, it's specific, measurable, it's achievable, it's realistic, and it's timely, right? So if you just say, I want to lose weight. Okay. But if you say, I want to lose 5 pounds by the end of the year, right? By December 31st. Okay, well, that's specific. You know that you need to lose 30 pounds, right?
Probably not eat it.
It's measurable, right? If you don't hit 5 pounds or whatever it is, you didn't hit it, right? Like you have something to measure it against. It's achievable, meaning it's not like, I want to lose 200 pounds, right? Like, don't start off with that, start off with 5. It's realistic, right? Like, if you're going off the healthy guidelines of losing 1 to 2 pounds a week, you can theoretically lose 5 pounds by the end of the year, and it's timely. You have a deadline. You said December 31st, right? If you just have a generic, I want to lose weight, well, you have nothing to weigh yourself against, right? You have no motivation. There's nothing tying you to that. So create the SMART goals, and then have check-in dates. So put something on your calendar that says, ooh, I'm 4 weeks out from having to lose 5 pounds. How am I doing, right? So here's some resources. So the first link is to Lifehacker U. So this is a blog post that they put up in the fall of 2013 that literally goes over all the education you can get for free. This talks about the Stanford, Yale, Harvard classes. It talks about different tutorials and websites. In general, I recommend you just search lifehacker.com anyways. In general, when I'm looking for an app to do something in my life, or I'm looking for a trick, Lifehacker has already covered it. Are you wondering?
You know if it's an I or an L at the end of that?
Oh, yeah, and I actually have that. So it's capital H, capital S, capital J, small a, capital P, and then a lowercase l. So they even do what they call high fives, right? So if you're wondering which CMS system you use, WordPress, Squarespace, whatever, they'll do a high five, right? And everybody will vote and rank, and you can see the pros and cons. So Lifehacker U will help you with all that stuff, and they'll give you good tips on how to develop. IGDA to IGDA Chicago. You're at an IGDA Chicago meeting right now. So those links will lead to the websites for IGDA and IGDA Chicago. And then Indie City Games. So for those that don't know, there's a group called Indie City Games. They meet roughly once every 2 months. They're a bit laid back, so you just kind of have to watch out. They have a website and a Facebook group, but it's a whole bunch of people that get together at DePaul, and they all just make games, right? Like, that's what they're there for. And they'll even show off their games, right? So they'll do a bunch of talks or learn something, and at the end they'll just do like an open house, right? Where everybody just opens up their laptops or grabs their tablets or whatever, and you can walk around and just play everybody's games. So it's a great way to get to know little stuff, to, you know, learn tips and tricks from indies who have kind of blazed your path, and also to get to play new games and get some new ideas. So I totally recommend that. And then create your list of tools. So for me, it's implementing the Getting Things Done system by David Allen. It's using Evernote to store a lot of my notes or pages or reference files. It's how I know to find a lot of these references. I tend to use Asana for my project management, but look at Trello or Basecamp. Do a spreadsheet. You could try MS Project if you really want to go down that path, but if it's just you, I wouldn't recommend it. My friends that use Nosby, some that use, like, everybody's got a different system, but find what works for you and get that path going so that you know what you're doing, you can keep growing, you can keep checking in with yourself. Okay, so now that you've got a plan for trying to learn all that stuff, we're going to talk about mentoring. So there are 2 sides to mentoring. There's being a mentor and being the mentee or protege. Either way, being a part of that process can be very rewarding and life-changing. Mentoring is where someone, the mentor, teaches or gives help and advice to someone, the mentee or protege, to help them either accomplish a specific goal or to improve their overall life. I could talk about this topic for hours alone, but let's see if I can give you enough info about mentoring to inspire you to join me. So here's why mentoring matters, and why I feel so strongly about mentoring. Mentoring is a very valuable tool because having a mentor is one of the best ways to learn. In a lot of cases, they have been there and done that. Having a mentor can set you up for success. They know the mistakes they made and can kind of guide you away from that. Being a mentor can actually inspire you to achieve your own goals and do better. When I have check-ins with some of my proteges, they're like, oh yeah, I was doing this and I accomplished this. I'm like, man, I'm lazy. Like, I gotta keep up, right? Like, I can't have them outpace me, right? Like, I gotta keep going. And being a mentor means you can help others learn from your mistakes, You can stop stuff before it happens. You can catch that person and be like, don't be that guy, right? You can go to that person and be like, you forgot tip number 1, you're smelling, right? Like, you use the shower, right? So, you can help others because a lot of times one of the reasons I like to mentor and get people involved is there's a lot of great talent that sometimes just doesn't know the answers to the questions you guys are asking today. And if they just had that, they could totally just kick ass and rise to the ranks in this industry and be amazing, right? But it takes somebody there to be like, why don't you have a business card? What do you mean you didn't think you'd get a business card, right? So it's that kind of stuff. So pop quiz again. So how many of you, there's only about less than 10 of you that raised your hands last time, have business cards with you that you can write on and that are with you at all times? Oh, okay, that's good. It's about the same number of hands. Awesome. And I'll give you some more tips later. So being a mentee, I can't get into extremely specific tips here because each mentoring relationship is different. But there are 3 basic guidelines that every mentee or protege should follow. The first is be respectful. Your mentor is giving up their precious time, so respect that and respect them, right? 2, work with the mentor to set clear goals and communication and process. So talk to them ahead of time at the start about how and when to communicate. So you're not necessarily emailing them and clogging up their inbox and they're like, man, you should have just IM'd me, right? Like I get hundreds of emails a day. There's no way I'm seeing that, right? Like just find me, just call me, whatever. 3, show up and do the work. Many mentors are giving a lot of their mentees time, resources, introductions, etc. If they ask you to do something, do it, right? It's plain, be respectful, do the work, right? They're going to give up their time, you need to give up yours. Being a mentor. So pay it forward. Again, I can't get into extremely specific tips because each mentoring relationship is different, but here are some guidelines for mentors. So first, decide what relationship you want to have. Is it a short-term specific focused goal relationship or a long-term broader relationship where you're helping with them everything? Will you help them in their personal life because that sometimes interferes with their professional life? Is it very structured, like you get an email every week and you check in once a month? Or is it just ad hoc where you're there as their whatever expert, their art expert, their producer expert, whatever, and they just call you when they have a question? Mentors need to respect themselves, so it goes both ways. Do not put up with a mentee who is treating you badly or disrespecting you. There are much more deserving proteges you could be helping. It's hard to do, but it's necessary. I've had to do it myself. Again, set clear goals in the communication process, and specifically for mentors who are vets or supervising the industry, if you're mentoring a student, try and be as upfront as possible about when you think you're going to be busy or unreachable. Like, hey, we're about to hit beta. You will not be able to reach me for the next 2 weeks. Leave me alone, right? But I'm letting you know now. And lastly, hold them accountable. So if they can't do the work, if they're not following through, then it's just not worth it, right? And you need to give them warnings and then let it go, right? Because you need to be there. You need to have somebody who wants it, right? Because there are hundreds, thousands of people who want what they want, right, but are willing to do the work. And then at the bottom is just a quote from Randy Posh. This is from his last lecture book, but he talks about how it's paying it forward, right? Like he can never do for his mentor what the mentor did for him, so he's just got to pay it forward, right? Like I had somebody who helped me get into the industry, so now I got to help somebody else get into the industry. And then that person will help somebody else get into the industry. One of my greatest joys was when one of my mentees came to me and she's like, hey, I've just been so thankful and so grateful for what you've been doing for me that I met this gal who's just really scared and nervous and I'm taking her on and she's now my mentee, right? And I'm trying to pay it forward. And I was like, okay, I've done it, right? Like I've shared the values, I've shared the info, like somebody can take that and move forward. So action items. You need to decide where and why you need a mentor. Everybody should have a mentor. Even vets do. We all have mentors. So decide what it is. Is it in your professional life? Is it in your personal life? Do you just need somebody to hold you accountable, right? So are you the kind of person that if you have to literally call somebody at the end of the month and tell them what you did or didn't do, it's not going to make you suddenly do what you need to do like right at the end of the month, right? Kind of like putting in your course projects or your essays or any of that stuff, so familiar. Map out where you want to go. So are you trying to get a new job? Are you transitioning into a new role and you need some help? Do you just need someone to bounce ideas off of, right? Because they've started up their own company, so you want to kind of be like, hey, I'm just about to get some investors, so can you look at these terms for me and tell me what I should be looking for? Find a mentor and create a plan. So that goes back to the guidelines earlier. Talk to people, find a mentor that will work with you, and then work together to create a plan for what you want to accomplish. So if it's setting you up to get a job, then find somebody who that's what they do, right? They help you write resumes and do portfolios and business cards and the whole thing. Find that kind of person. But what you're wanting to do is become a lead. Well, then you got to find somebody who has management experience, who's been there, who works with leads, who knows what's going on. And then pay it forward and become a mentor. There's always somebody that you could be mentoring, even if you're a student. Go to high school, go to junior high, right? There's somebody there who wants to learn, who needs help, who wants to get interested. So pay it forward. Some mentoring resources. So my friend Luke did a mentoring post. His link is on the right, talking about some of the standards and expectations that he sets for his mentees, and it was based off the fact that he works with a lot of graduate students. So this is what he does. So it inspired me to do my own mentoring post. So that's what the first link is for. So it kind of gives you ideas of how we set up our relationships, what we do. The IGDA Scholars Program. So this is what I was telling you about before. So this is the link to the main IGDA Scholars website. The call for applications for GDC is now open. I am still mentoring on a regular basis my scholar from 2006. She's now lead at Zynga. I was there when she was a student. I was there when she was an intern. I've been with her the whole way up, the whole way down, the whole deal. The IGDA Scholars Program is by far amazing and one of the best things about the IGDA. So this year, for example, I actually had two scholars because I had to play backup for a guy whose wife had just given birth. So we had a lunch where it was literally 20 scholars and 15 of the 20 mentors were able to make it. And everybody got to talk about their tips for spiting conferences and networking and talking to people. I spent hours with my mentees ahead of the conference, going over their schedules, helping them pick sessions to go to, giving them tips. Like, if you have a choice between a lecture and a roundtable, you always go to the roundtable, unless it's really crucial that you go to the lecture, because the lecture will show up recorded on the vault, and you'll have access to it. But the roundtable doesn't get recorded, so you miss whatever that is right there, right? Going over that, setting up the resumes, helping them do portfolio, so they went to GDC. They got to go to studio tours. They got to go visit Double Fine and learn how Double Fine makes games and get to do that kind of visit. They got to hear from industry speakers. They got swag bags, right? Like, the list goes on, and we do this at multiple events throughout the year. We've done E3, Casual Connect, CDEC, Tokyo, GDC Europe. So this is what we do, right? And it's just an amazing, amazing experience and a chance to you get the free all-access pass to the conference, which I guess I should say is the big draw for a lot of people. So apply if you're a student, or you will be a student at the time of the application. This is an amazing opportunity to get hooked up with people, to get mentoring directly, to find out what you need to know, get access. I will take my mentees to all the parties and to the different events, and I will introduce them to people, and they will walk away. One of my mentees is starting up his own studio, and I've introduced him to people that are now talking about investing in this company and all that stuff. So take advantage of that, apply. There's instructions on that website. And then Game Mentor Online. This was a project that was originally started as a partnership between Women in Games International and the IGDA Women in Games SIG, but it's not a female-only program. It's now run by Wiggy, and essentially, unlike the scholarships, this is long-term mentoring. So mentors who sign up and get matched with a mentee, they know it's for at least 6 months, and you can make it about whatever you want. I need help getting in an industry. I want to grow and become a lead, right? So sign up as a mentee, sign up as a protege. That's the two main mentoring programs that I recommend in the industry. Okay, so a quick bit on advocacy and volunteering, so then we can get to the good parts. For as old as this industry is, it's also new. And for as large as this industry is, it's also small. So if you care at all about this industry, you need to get involved through advocacy and volunteering. Advocacy is the act or process of supporting a cause or proposal. In this case, we're talking about video games. And volunteering is, of course, offering to do something or give something without getting paid for it or being forced to do it. the being forced is kind of key there. So here's why it matters. Advocating or volunteering matters because it's the best way to grow this industry. This is how we make sure that our industry is growing, that it's got good sales, people in it know what they're doing, the whole deal. It helps gain global respect for your discipline. I will get into a little bit, but there are QA, writers, etc. They've all come in with the goal of making them be respected to get one notch up on the totem pole of actually being considered a real developer. It brings us into community. It helps you learn and grow personally. And because we're all tired of everybody telling us how bad video games are for society, right? Like, video games don't kill people, right? Like, this is, like, we're all tired of that, right? So pop quiz number 5. See if I can get some more hands down. How many people here have business cards that you can write on with you at all times and are easily reachable?
How would you define easily reachable?
Like, it would take you 30 seconds or less to pull it out. Okay. Okay, so some notes on advocacy. So I won't spend a lot of time in this section, because I know most of you are here for the job searching and the rest of the stuff. But I strongly encourage you to get involved in the different ways that you can advocate for this industry. If you do not start becoming aware of what is said and done to this industry and get involved, then you will not become aware when your industry's products are censored, when they're trashed and blamed, leading to huge crashes that affect you and all your colleagues, when studios start shutting down because they can't make the games they want to anymore. This is a bad thing. And if you don't believe me, just ask all the people in the comic book industry about how the Senate hearings went in 1954 for them. It was not pretty. It created a crash for them that took ages to recover from. So this picture, this is a quote from Daniel Greenberg, who went on an interview for Fox News shortly after the Newton shootings and was defending video games. And I grabbed this, and I am part of the group at the IGDA that was helping put together the letter to Vice President Biden and helping get those interviews and talking points ready to go. This is a big deal, right? Like, you need to get involved, you need to know what's going on, and you need to know how to dispel the rumors, right? Dispel the myths, right? Like, studies aren't really showing that video games cause real-world violence, right? Imaginary violence does not cause real-world violence. In fact, it's the opposite, where more and more studies are being done that show that it's actually beneficial, that it lets people get out their aggressions, that it improves their cognition and their spatial skills. It makes surgeons more likely to not screw up when they're doing surgery on you because they're getting used to the skills and the things necessary. Volunteering, it's how you grow and develop new skills. It's how you get to help others. It's how you get to make friends. A good chunk of my bridesmaids and groomsmen at my wedding were actually people that I met in video games. I met my husband in video games. So, you know, this is like some of my best friends, like I met them through games. My friend Kat, when she went to her first conference, and we were all staying together in like this house, like 8 of us rented 2 houses in Austin, and she went to like her first day or 2, and she came out, she's like, I've met my people, right? Like, she was among people that understood her and liked the things she did, and she didn't have to feel weird talking about stuff, right? And people got the references that she made, you know, from her geek stuff. It's how you can stay on top of new trends. So I'm in a ton of IGDA's special interest groups, production, writing, quality assurance, etc. And that's where I find out where the trends are at, right? Because I'm seeing the discussions happening in real time. And I can see that they're talking a lot about Agile. Okay, now they're talking about Lean. Oh no, now they're talking about Unity, right? Like, I can see that, I can stay on top of trends. Because it makes you feel good, right? It's just like when you're working for the Red Cross or donating to, you know, something else. If you need a more selfish reason, it's how you can get and find jobs for clients. And I'm not kidding. That's how I'm able to find jobs and clients. I would say 95% of my clients come through the volunteer work that I do for this industry. It's how you can finally make sure your discipline gets some respect. So there's a story behind this picture. I founded the Quality Assurance SIG, and I was working with some friends, and we were trying to get a quality assurance track at GDC, or even just more sessions. We would have settled for more sessions, but we were constantly told no, right? I was even talking to the guy who was running GDC at the time, like, can we just maybe have like a QA pass because we don't get paid a lot and there's not a lot of budget to send QA people or whatever. But we tried and tried and tried, and 5 years later, the IGA took a chance, and at their summit, we had the first ever quality assurance track worldwide for QA people. We were there hand in hand with all the other disciplines, with all the other topics. That was it. We had made the golden ticket, we were respected, somebody actually liked QA. We were excited, we were dancing, there was awards, everything, right? Now we have a summit at GDC, right? It's how you make your discipline get respected. Writers do it, like their whole goal is to write books and do other stuff so that people would stop bringing writers in after beta going, can you just add a story to this? Can't be that hard, right? You just throw a story on top, right? Oh, did I also tell you that all the voiceovers are already done and we already sort of wrote a story, so really what we need to do is fix the story because it didn't work and we chopped out a whole section of the game, and so now you have no way to get from A to B. But go ahead, you got like a week, right? It'll be good, right? So that's what they do, right? It's like you work on that.
It's a plot hole filler.
Plot hole filler. It's called Narrative Pandemic. Rhianna Pratchett, who's done Mirror's Edge, she wrote for the latest Tomb Raider game, etc. She actually have buttons that she gives out to all of us when you do stuff like that, when you have to go in and rescue a story. So some action items. Decide where and how you can volunteer and be an advocate. Can you help out at events? So like, can you sit here and set up video cameras or check people in at the door or guide people to sessions? Can you offer up lectures? Can you write white papers or participate in best practice document collaborations? Can you lobby or get involved speaking out to the press? Like, are you related to politics, or do you know politicians, or do you not mind writing lots of petitions, or do whatever you need to do? Map out where you want to go. Are you trying to go grow your skills while you're giving back, or you just want to give back? Are you trying to get more respect for what your discipline does? Then you're going to do stuff differently than if you're just trying to help create events and build a community. Do you want to get involved locally, or do you want to get involved globally? Find an org that you want to get involved with. IGDA, ICG, VGVN, Video Game Voters Network, ACM, PMI. I mean, they're all over the place. I mean, even non-game orgs like Girl Scouts, the Red Cross, etc. can give you a place to give back to a community while getting training. So if you really want to learn how to do X, find an org that needs help, but needs help in that area, and they'll teach you, they'll train you. They'll get you up on how to use social media or build websites or do fundraising or whatever. And then create a plan. So now that you know what you want to do and where you want to do it and you already fit your goals, create a plan for what you're going to do and how you're going to get involved. So I could give you tons of resources on this, but I'm going to give you basically just one, which is the IGA. It's seriously the best resource that I can give you to get started. So the link on the left is to IGA's site. The link on the right is to IGA Chicago's site. If you're actually interested in doing advocacy, email me directly and I will get you some more advice on that and help get you involved. We're always looking for people that are willing to kind of take care of that stuff. But start there and then work your way out. Literally, the best thing I've ever done is get involved with the IGA. It's the reason why I was able to have interviews on Wednesday when I was told I was getting laid off on Monday. It's the reason I could get a job in 9 days, including a weekend, a conference, right? A set of interviews, like literally had the job offer contract and signed it within 9 days of getting laid off. And I took a day off to cry and do all that other stuff. But you know, so like that's the reason, is because you get involved, you get to know people, you get to better yourself, you make yourself that much more valuable. Okay, so on to the stuff that most of you came here for, the big goodies. It's time, if it's time for you to break in the industry, to stay in the industry, including contract jobs. So we're going to see what you've done before. So the keys are knowing, you know, what are you searching for? Do you have the tools? Are you prepared? Where are you searching? So I'm going to ask some questions, some more raise your hand stuff. Have you ever applied for a job? Okay. Have you ever tailored your resume? Okay. Have you ever tailored your portfolio to a company?
That's part. I was kind of hoping. I don't. As a game designer, I don't know a good place to gather all my work together and display it. Like currently, I'm using my Tumblr, but I feel that's not probably good.
Tumblr's fine. I'll give you some more resources later. There are a lot of website places you can just set up your portfolios. It's very easy to get WordPress sites. It's very cheap to get your own domain. Everybody can always have a portfolio. Even the audio monkeys, the 2 audio monkeys we have, even the ones that want to be producers, there's a way to do it. It doesn't matter so much where it is, as long as it's accessible and it looks good and it shows off your strengths. So if Tumblr is what you know and you can excel at using it, then use it, right? But what I mean by tailor for your portfolio, so NetherRealm keeps coming up with a local company. For those who don't know, NetherRealm used to be Midway, right, or WB Games Chicago, or any of the other names that you want to give it at this point. Obviously, Mortal Kombat, Injustice, right, fighting games. So if you're an artist, right, and you have your general portfolio, and you want to apply it NetherRealm, right, and so let's just say it's janedoe.com/portfolio, and you want to apply it NetherRealm, we'll do a janedoe.com/portfolio/NetherRealm. And on that page, say this is some of my work specifically for NetherRealm, and show off your art that is of fighters, that's the background art that you would see in a fighter game that's different than what you would see in a sports game, right? Figure out a way to tailor that portfolio if you have the option, because it makes them feel like you really care about that job. You really are interested in that company. You know what they make. And if I have to explain to you what my company makes, I am not hiring you, right? Like, I want to know that you did at least a little research to know what I'm working on. How many of you have ever Googled yourself? It's okay to admit it, and you should be doing it. Have you reviewed your public profiles? Okay. Meaning, like, you went and looked at how does your Facebook profile look to the public? How does your LinkedIn profile look to the public? Okay. Done a phone interview. Okay. Done an aptitude test.
Like
Meaning
the
you
ones
had
in
to
high
draw
school?
some art, you had to do some coding, right? Like you had to come up with a design doc on the fly, that kind of stuff.
I've not gotten that far in the application process.
Done an in-person interview. Okay.
For PetSmart.
Done thank you emails or notes. Okay, good. You should all be raising your hands for that one. Attended a game dev event. This one does not count. It's like, gotta go. Have you been an event volunteer? Great. That's key. You would be amazed at how often the conference associates find the contacts and the jobs just because they're there helping everybody. Have you spoken at an industry event? We got a few hands. Been interviewed by the press. This is a tricky one. You gotta learn how to do it. Mentored a coworker. I love you. Thank you. I love mentoring. Mentored a colleague, so meaning not somebody at your company. Sponsored a coworker. Does everybody know what a sponsor is? Okay, so there are mentors and there are sponsors. So a mentor is just somebody who's there to try and help you get your goals. Is there on the side. They just do it because they do it, right? Maybe have a company mentoring program. A sponsor is a person whose job it is assigned to you from the company to specifically help you reach a certain goal or succeed. So, like in a bigger company, they might tell the VP of production that Sarah is an up-and-comer, and we would like to get her ready to be director of production. So you need to do whatever it takes to get her there, right? Like, part of their job is literally to help you achieve certain goals and to make stuff happen. So that's a sponsor, and if you can get one of those, that's amazing. How many of you have volunteered locally? And what about globally? Got a few hands on that one. How many of you have advocated for the industry?
Does arguing on the internet count?
No. Somebody is always wrong on the internet, but arguing does not help that. Okay, so pop quiz number 6. Let's see if I can still have some hands raised. How many of you here have business cards that you can write on with you at all times that are easily reachable and in more than one place? I got some, okay.
More than one place on your person?
On your person.
Essentially, yes. So if we take me, I have a gridded, so it's got stuff that holds your stuff together so it doesn't fall out. I've got 2 sets of business card holders. Each of them have my business cards in it. One I use to store people's business cards. And then I have my wallet, because I always have my wallet with me just about anywhere, right? So I've got a little pocket. I've got business cards in my wallet. And then I've got my laptop bag, And I have a set of emergency business cards in one of the pocket, right? So for those of you having backpacks, that's where you do it. And then I also have a little pouch that has all my cables for like my iPod, my phone stuff. I have emergency business cards in there, just in case I happen to some reason only have that in my iPod, not the rest. And then I will tell you a tip, and let me find it. How many of you have phones with you that have cases on them?
It's good to know, thank you.
So here's my phone. Has a hard case. If you took the back of this off, you'll see a business card in there. Right? Same with my iPod, it's got a case on it. So even if all I have is my phone, I have a business card with me in case I happen to run into somebody and I'm like, oh my god, I have to give them my business card. So I don't have that awkward, oh crap, I'm out, right? Or let's find a piece of paper and hope I can find a pen to write their name on it, right? So I have a business card here. So if you have a phone with a hard case on it, you have no excuse to not have a business card with you. At all. Lifehacker will even tell you you should store like your money and your ID in here if you need to, right? Instead of trying to carry stuff around. So it's a great place to store like an emergency 20 bill, but this is what I mean by in all places. So how many of you can actually say that? I got you! Woohoo! I knocked every hand down. Well, now you have a goal, right? Okay, so the 3 Ds process. So 3D stands for get in, get what they need, and get out easy. So this is how it relates to job searching. It's all about making sure people get in, get what they need, and get out. For example, how easily can they find your website or your resume? Can they quickly find the info on your resume that matters to them most, right? So if they want to know that you know Unity or C++, can they find that, right? Without having to dig or spend a lot of time. Can they get a hold of you to schedule an interview, right? They have no way to reach you or they can't find it, like the business card that they can't read. It's not going to do any good. The thing you have to realize is that there are hundreds, if not thousands of people often going for the exact same job you are. Think Blizzard. So how are you? No, literally. Like if they have like 4 recruiters, they open up a job, they're getting hundreds of applications a day for that job alone. So how are you going to stand out from the crowd so you don't get lost in that stack of resumes and portfolios, right? What's going to keep you in the pile of people that they want to talk to? It's all about leveling up. So I'm going to put this in game terms for you, and it'll be easy to understand. So think of this like an RPG, and you have to level up. You need to practice your skills and learn new ones. You need to constantly upgrade and repair your equipment. You need to go on the quests that give you the experience you need to level up and make it to the next phase, whether that's in the interview process or whether that's just getting better and better jobs. Everything you do to level yourself up makes you stand out from the crowd that much more, and that is what's going to make or break the deal. Okay, so job searching tips. It's all about the preparation. So this is, I'll give you the website later. And literally her headline to this section was what you should have done months ago. So this is what you should have been doing months ago, right? You need to have already been preparing and networking. Students need to have been looking for internships. You need to be doing informational interviews before you even need a job in companies you might like. So if you're 2 years out from graduating, start talking to people at NetherRealm, at Wargaming, at Wideload. Take them out for coffee. Invite them out for pizza. Well, we get a lot of pizza, but invite them out to lunch. Do whatever you need to do, right? And just start talking to them, because when you don't need a job, it's a lot easier for them to want to talk to you and accept that, right? Because they know they're not going to show up and just get pestered for a job, right? This is just a, what's it like to be an X? How do you like your company? What are things that I should be thinking of as I'm getting ready to graduate? What would you suggest if, just ask them for advice. Most of us are very friendly, and we'll just get together and do it for you. Talk to your friends and colleagues about what they've heard from companies, or if their company does referral programs. So if you know somebody that works somewhere, ask them if they have a referral program. A lot of times they'll get money, so win-win for everybody, right? And then once you get a job, don't stop. Start preparing for the next one. Look at you. You never know what's going to happen, and you don't want to have to scramble when it's time, right? So as soon as you get that job, update your resume, right? Put it on your LinkedIn profile, right? Start keeping track of the skills and the accomplishments you're learning, so that if something happens and you lose your job or you have to move, you're not scrambling to try and find the time to do that while you're all worried about where's the next paycheck going to come from. Don't do mass requests for LinkedIn recommendations. Now, I'm not talking about those silly little buttons that everybody hits that says, John Romero knows about video games. Well, no, duh. John Romero, of course, knows about video games, right? I'm talking about the recommendations where somebody literally says, like, oh, David was amazing. I had a great time working with him, and he was really key to the team. Don't ask for a bunch of those at once, because the dates show. So when we look at your recommendation list, and it's like November 14th, November 14th, November 14th, November 14th, that tells me that either you're desperate, you just got laid off, right? Like you're looking to change jobs and you're hoping that's gonna make it better. So spread it out over time, right? Like ask for a recommendation or two, maybe once a month, maybe once every 2 months. Find out what works for you based on how responsive they are. So it doesn't look so bad. And have reminders for that. Have your tools ready, and I'll go over checklist at the end of this section. Number 2, things you need to consider. Do you want a full-time job? Or are you okay being a temp contractor? Or even a freelancer? Do you want to do it alone, the job search, or do you want to work with external recruiters? I worked for one for a while. I was a contractor. I have some posts on my website which talk about what to look out for with game recruiters. There's a lot of due diligence you need to do. The first key is if they have no actual names or people mentioned on their about page, you do not want to work for them. I'm just going to tell you that right now. How flexible are you? Are you open to lots of types of positions? Will you work on any platform or genre? Or you're like, no, I need to work on an RPG, right? Well, every time you create a restriction or requirement, that reduces the amount of jobs that you're available for, right? So are you able to move even if you have to pay for yourself to move, right? Like you're not at a spot where they're going to pay for relocation. Because if you can go anywhere in the world, then that's X that times many more jobs that you have available to you. What factors in your life do you need to consider? You need to create a list of job decision areas that you need to consider every time you're looking for a job or contemplating an offer. That could be like a cost of living change, like, oh my god, I'm moving to California and everything's like twice as expensive there. It's where are my friends or family nearby, right? Like, do I have a support system? So if I need to get used to the area or I need help, do I have somebody nearby that will help me? What are the taxes like, right? So some states have no income tax. Others have, like Minnesota, there's no tax on the essentials, the necessities. So you won't have to pay for food, tax on food or clothing, right? So how does that factor in? Does that make your salary that much go farther, or does it reduce it, right? So if you're thinking of freelancing, I have a few resources. Freelancing, I'll get to that in a second, I know why you're all laughing. Freelancing has its pros. You can have slightly more flexible schedules, you can pick and choose work, etc. And it has its cons. You're slightly less stable than being an employee. You have the feast or famine thing where you can be making a ton of money once and not so much the rest of the time. And not everyone's cut out for it. But if you decide you want to freelance, here's some resources. So the first link is David Airy talking about his thoughts on spec work or crowdsourcing. He's a graphic designer. And he goes into like 99 designs, that kind of stuff. Like what you need to just figure out as to whether or not you're okay when it comes to giving up your work ahead of time or for free. The next two are your rates. So these are calculators. One is from Freelance Switch that kind of help you decide what your hourly rate should be if you have to charge a rate. You have to keep in mind though, these are just generic calculators, so they aren't able to go, oh, but you're really awesome, right? So your quality of work means you should ask for like $10 more or whatever. And you have to take into account the cost of living and that kind of stuff and what you need, right? So, but some of them will let you do that. Like, I only want to work 20 hours a week, right? And only for 48 weeks out of the year, because I want 4 weeks completely off, right? So then it'll be like, okay, well, but if you still want to make $100,000 each year, this is what you need to charge. And then you go, oh my God, that's not possible, or I need to work more hours, or I need to expect to make less, etc. And then the bottom one, fuck you, pay me. This is a video from Creative Mornings in San Francisco. Mike Montero did the main part of the talk. He's a designer at an agency. And literally that's how he starts the talk. And he's like, how many of you have been told, we decided to go into a different direction? Bunch of hands raised up, and he's like, fuck you, pay me, right? How many of you are told, well, it's not what we wanted? Well, fuck you, pay me, right? And then he's like, seriously, that's the name of the talk. And he goes into great detail about what you need to do when looking at contracts, getting a lawyer. He even has his lawyer come into the talk, who talks about all the contracts they sign, the deals, what they put up with, what they don't put up with, having accountants, the whole thing. This is an absolute must for anybody who wants to take on just contracts or do freelances. Absolute must. I recommend it to everybody.
Just
Okay.
to go back to that link. Thank you.
Mhm.
188.
188 looks like L capital X L capital S.
Thank you.
Pretty sure, but again, I will share all this later. Okay, so must-dos. You need to talk to your friends, your connections, your mentors. If they can get you referrals, it will get your foot in the door and make you stand out. You need to dress appropriately. Although we're a very casual industry, interviews are a little different than the norm, right? So it often means getting a bit more dressed up than if you were just in your normal jeans and a t-shirt at a conference. So my recommendation to you is talk to the HR or the recruiter, the person that you're talking with who's scheduling all this up, and ask them what the suggested dress code is for people who are interviewing there. There are some companies that treat interviews very seriously, and they're old school, and you need to show up with the suit, the tie, the whole deal, right? You need to have the really nice dress with the pantyhose and the whole getup, right? And you will be in that suit and tie, sitting across from somebody who's in shorts and a flip-flop with a nice, t-shirt on or whatever, but that's what they expect. And there are others who, if you showed up in normal interview attire with the whole suit and tie, they'd be like, oh my god, I can't talk to this guy, this is so awkward, right? They're like, if he'd come in khakis and a polo, maybe, right? So talk to the person who's standing at the interview, ask them. It's not an issue, it's not gonna make you look bad. If anything, it makes you look more prepared, more considerate, right? It's making you stand out from the crowd. Keep track. Always keep track of every place you've applied to. Right? Like, if you don't even have time to sit there and proofread your resume, I don't think you're going to have the time to do a good job, right? Like, this is not something that I just assigned you with and said, write a resume in 5 minutes, go, right? Like, you did not have to apply at all, right? You chose to apply, so take that seriously, right? Because otherwise I can't or if I tell you, like, you have to send me a resume and a cover letter, and you don't send me a cover letter. Well, if I can't trust you to follow the instructions to apply for a job, how am I going to trust you to follow instructions when I need you to make a game and not break the build or not screw up the textures, right? Like, you need to do what it says. Okay, so common mistakes. And I see this a lot. So if you don't do any of this stuff, you'll be making me very happy. So the first thing is, don't mislead a hiring manager on what you were responsible for on a project or in your demo reel or portfolio. This industry is small, and we will find out. I was working for a company, and we got handed, this gal gave us a demo reel, and we put it in, I'm going to date myself here, we put it into the VCR. So we put the tape into the VCR, and all the artists got around, and I happened to be working in the artist section, so we all got together, and we were reviewing this gal's portfolio, and we're watching, and one of the guys happened to work with her at the company where she was showing a lot of her work on. And he was like, she didn't do that. I did that. Joe did that. Yeah, that was kind of her. See that thing off in the background? That was her, but I did that. Literally just tore her demo reel apart, right? Because she gave her demo reel to somebody who she used to work with, right? So don't mislead. If you're showing off, if you're showing off a set of work or running through a level, make it clear, right? Like, have a description on there, especially on your website, of this is what I was responsible for, right? Like, I did the lighting, I rigged the character, I did the background art, I did the scripting, right? Make it very obvious what you're doing. Don't lie on your resume. There's absolutely no reason to do this, and you can get fired. And don't listen to any recruiter who will tell you that it's okay, because it is absolutely not okay. And if I find out, then I can no longer trust you. So if a job does come up that you are qualified for, I'm not going to consider you because I already know that you lied, so I can't trust you. Don't blast out the same resume and cover letter to 100 different companies. Any of us who've been doing this long enough can tell it's the exact same resume and cover letter that you did, right? This goes back to the tailoring question, right? So talk about why you want to work for company X or what products you like. Look at the job description. Don't just send out a generic programmer job description. Send out a job description. Send out a resume that fits 75 to 80% of that job description. And my pro tip for you is never hit every single bullet on the job description in your resume when you send it to a company. Hit about 75 to 80%. And here's why. If I'm looking at a resume and you hit everything on that job description, I go, great, they can do that job, and I put them in the maybe pile, right? But if I'm looking at a job description and this guy or gal is really selling themselves, I'm like, this guy's awesome. He can do a lot of stuff we're looking for. I wonder if he can do X. Now I'm going to email that person or call them to find out more. You want to give them a reason to talk to you, because then as soon as you get them on the phone and the email, that's when you can show off and tell them how awesome you are and how committed and how much you like the company. So don't hit every single bullet. Give them a reason to talk to you. Don't forget to ask questions during the interview. If I am sitting across the table from you and I go, should you have any questions for me? And you go, no, I'm good. You are not getting hired. At least, I mean, everybody's different, but I will not hire you. You have to have at least one question. Sure, maybe if you're in one of those day-long interviews where you've gone through 10 different people, maybe by the 10th person you don't really need to ask them again what their coffee's like, but you have to have some questions, right? What I do when I used to job search is I would ask the person ahead of time, who might I be speaking to? Things are always going to change, but you find out in general who you're going to be speaking to, and then look them up. So I would look up their LinkedIn profile. I would look them up in Moby Games, figure out what games they worked on, what the position is in the company, and then I would specifically ask them questions about that. So if I knew I was meeting with the lead artist, I would ask them what they thought about their art pipeline and any ways they could improve it, right? I would ask the programmers what they like about their auto build, or do they have an auto build, right? So I would ask the questions that specifically relate to them, and they know. I would ask them questions about the company and the products, and so it makes them feel like, oh, I actually care about this job. I'm not just doing this just to get a paycheck. And lastly, don't forget to read anything before you sign it. Read everything. If you can get an attorney to review contracts, family friend, whatever, or if you have your own attorney, do it. You will be amazed if you don't pay attention what you've just signed your life to, right? There are certain companies where the employment contract will literally basically say, we own your soul and everything that belongs to it. Because literally it's anything you think of, you do, whatever, belongs to them while you're working for them, even if it's not on company time or with company resources. There are some that will say, you cannot work anywhere in games for a year after you leave, anywhere in the US. Do you want to sign that? I don't want to sign that, right? Now, sure, non-competes are, a bit of a murky thing, they're slightly unenforceable, but know what you're getting into, right? Make sure you know what can or cannot happen. Okay, so, yeah?
In that situation, if you are presented with a non-compete or something like that, how do you combat that?
So, there's a few different ways to go about it. So the first is, in a situation like a non-compete, it depends on what the non-compete is. So if it's the kind of non-compete that just says, you can't work on any competing projects while you're working for us, or at least they can't be commercial, maybe you're okay with that. If it's the you can't work anywhere in the US for 12 months, that's anything related to games, that's not okay. See what you can do. A lot of times if they're very insistent on that, sometimes they'll be like, oh man, I didn't even know that was in there, right? Or we haven't updated that in 5 years, let's change that right now, right? And you can get that fixed. In certain cases, if they're extremely strict and extremely ardent about something, you need to ask yourself, what does that say about the company, right? And is that the kind of place that you want to work for, right? Because either they lose talent really easily and they figure this is going to keep them there. They've been burned before, right? They're just draconian and figure they'll ask for the moon and see what happens, right? It's kind of like if you go in and one of the main benefits that somebody espouses to you is the catered lunches and dinners, that is code for you will be working here a lot. So we are going to feed you because you will still be here when it comes time for dinner, right? There are ways to tell that, right? So if that's what they're doing, if they have a service that you can talk to so that they will send your significant other flowers or to do your laundry or dry cleaning, you are going to be working there a lot. So you just need to ask yourself what it is that you are okay with and not okay with, right? And do you really need the job that bad? And in certain cases, maybe you're at the point where you're literally on your last dollars and you just need the paycheck to come in, and so you're going to take the chance that they're going to not enforce it or that you can make sure it's unenforceable. And sometimes you're like, you know what? I don't need it, right? Like, I can cut back on expenses and I can wait till I find another job, right? You just need to decide what's okay for you. That's a completely specific decision, just like, are you okay with working for a company that knowingly crunches, right? Like, Epic Games, they crunch. And they're openly admitting that, right? But they're like, but if you do it, you're gonna crap load of bonus money, right? So it's the, am I willing to kill myself for 60, 80, 100 hours a week on the off chance that I'm gonna get a really fat check and be okay with it, right? I know people that went to work for Zynga because they were just trying to last long enough for the IPO to happen. And they were gonna cash out and they were gonna leave, right? That's what they do. So you need to find out, like, what is good or not good for you.
And if I can, you should also brush up on the employment laws for wherever that company is, right? And there's usually websites and whatnot associated with the state government
Right.
or whatever that tells you what your rights are as an employee, right? So some different states have different rights for salaried employees versus contract employees. Non-compete clauses are illegal in some states, but not in others. Things like that.
I believe in Illinois, non-competes need some sort of consideration, like extra payment above like what you were paid for your work.
Not up on.
Right, well, in certain cases, they'll be like you can have a non-compete in a state, but it can't be too broad, right?
Right.
So like, if they said you can't work anywhere for like 60 days within like a 10-mile radius, fine, right? But if it's 12 months across the U.S., and so your choice is to stay at the company or leave the country, maybe you don't sign that one unless you really just want to go work like across the Atlantic somewhere, right? Like you want to go work in Sydney, right? So you need to figure out what that is, check with your lawyer, do whatever.
Well, I actually know a few people who were in non-competing clauses, I mean, not in the game industry. And oftentimes, with a draconian once to 12 months, you'll often get paid for that 12 months if
Yes.
you're severed.
And sometimes they'll do that just because they don't want you to give up their stuff to somebody else.
Like, that's
So
it.
they would rather pay you than not. But that's the kind of questions you need to ask is why is that there? At the very least, I usually try and get a clause in there, or I have my mentees get a clause in there that says, this only counts if I leave voluntarily.
Yeah.
Because if you get laid off or fired, they don't want you, but they don't want anybody else to have you. That doesn't seem very fair, right? Like, you can't pay me, why can't I go get paid somewhere else? Okay, so the map items checklist. So I think everybody got one of these sheets. So I have a list of items that
Are there
you
any extras? There's some in the front.
I have more back here too.
So I'm going to go through a list of items that you want to consider possibly having if you're going to search for a job. So basically, if you have it and need to make notes, or you don't have it, you want to make notes, you just list the item there that you want, whether it's done or not, if you need to check in to make sure it's done, and who you can get to help you. So if you're not very web savvy, but you have a friend who does WordPress sites, and you need to get like a WordPress site up, then do that, right? So another show of hands. So how many of you have a personal professional email? Great. So Cyberkill66, not an appropriate email handle, right? Like I don't want to see that. Sheri Rubin, right? Or SheriRubin.com, totally acceptable, right? It should have at least your first name or your last name or an initial in one part, right? Like you need to have something so that they recognize you. So when I'm emailing you back or I get an email from you, I have that name already in my head, right? Oh, I just got an email from Sheri Rubin. I'm talking to Sheri Rubin. I like Sheri Rubin. Let's read that email, right? I don't want to have to do it. Just like on your resume, you don't want to just say resume.pdf and send it out, right? You got to have your name on it, because otherwise I'm just going to totally lose it and have no idea who I'm looking at, right? Yes?
I'm assuming that the Columbia emails do not count.
If you have your first and last name, that's fine. I would still suggest getting your own, like even a Gmail or, you know, a Hotmail, Outlook, whatever. I would suggest getting your own one because then it doesn't scream student. Because my two options when I see that is he's faculty or he's a student. And I don't want to have that in my mind, right? I just want to know that you're awesome, right? Like I don't necessarily want to jump out with them. Okay, so how many of you have a personal, professional email that you check regularly? Great. If you're going to create your own email for job searching, you need to remember to check it. Because if I email you and then a week later you go, oh crap, and then you respond back to me, like I'm gone, right? Like I've already moved on to somebody else. So how many of you have that same email, but actually have an email signature? Not as many hands. So what this is, so you have johnsmith@gmail.com, right? And you have your own website or whatever. So at the bottom of your email, every time it goes out, it'll say John Smith, programmer, email, website. And you want to write it out fully. I know a lot of people like to do hyperlinks and do all this fancy stuff, but if I forward an email, more than likely, all I'm going to see is the text. I'm not actually going to get the link. So when somebody gets that email with the resume, they're going to be like, oh, this guy's kind of cool, and they're going to forward it off, right? So you don't want to give them any barriers to finding out about you. So you want to have an email signature that lists your main contact information, so they know how to get a hold of you, they know who you are, they know where your website is. Okay, so for those of you in companies, how many have a signature in your company email? Okay. How many of you have a LinkedIn profile? So there's a small population that is like, LinkedIn sucks, it's no good for anybody, blah, 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 I'll never go on it. I don't care. You have to have a LinkedIn profile. That's just how it is. I've helped people find jobs, get publishing deals, whatever. You have to have a LinkedIn profile, and it has to look good. It's essentially going to look kind of like a generic resume, but you have to have a LinkedIn profile, and you have to look professional on it. Okay, so how many of you have an updated LinkedIn profile? So like right now, it's saying exactly what you are and what you've done. Okay? How many of you have a company business card? How many of you have a personal business card, even if you're working for a company? So even if you're working for a company and they give you a business card, you should have your own personal card. What happens if you get laid off? What happens if you meet somebody and you want to work on a side project, right? Or you happen to find out something totally interesting, like you have a rock band on the side, right? And you find out that they're a bass player. Okay, well, let's jam sometime, right? You're not going to hand them your company email, right? You don't want to give them access to that stuff. You want to give them your personal stuff. How many of you have a portfolio? How many of you have a portfolio and a website? How many of you have a portfolio and a website on your own domain? She's like, oh, I had it. She's like, I got it. No, okay. So, domains are fairly cheap, and there's a lot of ways you can go about doing it. If you can afford it, get your own domain, preferably with your name in it, again, right? Or have something that's recognizable. Because it gives you control over what you are doing and putting out there, right? You're not at the mercy of a portfolio site suddenly changing how they show everything, right? You can make more customizations, you can do what you need to do. You can do a /NetherRealm or a /Wargaming, right? Gives you more control. So if you can do it, try and get something with your own domain on it.
Getting your own domain website, wouldn't that also entail basically making your own website?
No.
Maybe. Some hosts have one-click WordPress setups,
Wix,
right?
you know, Wix.
Just click.
Wix
right?
lets you use your own domain, and you can use their service to host your website.
You could also be
HostGator does
friends
that
with
too.
somebody here in college who
Right.
can make your website.
And that's what I'm saying. In that spot, write down who can help you, right? So find somebody or if you have friends that you trust, go in together on a hosting service, right? And all host your own stuff there, right? Figure out what you need to do to make it happen. It's not that hard. Search lifehacker.com. They literally have step-by-step tutorials and video series on how to make your own website and use your own domain. Literally for beginners, we'll walk you step-by-step through what you need to do. How many of you...
One sec. For those of you who are students and have your own site perhaps hosted on the school servers or some the schools or some others, when you graduate and give yourself an adult website, kill the one on the school
Yes.
server. Because otherwise it's there forever.
I actually had a career class where we had a book and it was about websites and portfolios, and you actually had to set up a portfolio through McGraw-Hill's website system, portfolio system. And I told the teacher, I'm like, I can't do this. And they're like, why? I'm like, because once it's on the internet, it never goes away, right? Like, I don't want that to be like the thing somebody sees when they Google me is some little weird portfolio site I never meant to set up in the first place that had like no ability to customize or look good or whatever. So it had a privacy setting. So we literally timed it where I said, okay, you ready? Made it public. She reviewed it, made it private, and then I killed it as soon as the class was over. So, you know, start with your own domain, right? Like, don't put stuff out there because the internet captures everything. The Wayback Machine, it's there. It will find you, right? Okay, so how many of you have a publicly viewable or published game, even if it's a personal project playable on your website?
Publicly viewable as in I have a download link for it?
Yes, it's on your
Okay, that
website,
works.
right?
Oh.
You should have your own game. You should have a game that's playable that you can show somebody somewhere, even if it's just a little demo, right? They need to know that you know how to make a game in some way, shape, or form, right? If you need to, band together with other people. So if you're just an artist and you have no idea how to code, find a programmer, right? If you do course projects and you have a team that you really liked, get together with them, make a game, put it up on your website, put it on your portfolio. This is my game, right? A lot of people are like, man, I don't have any game credits. They all want game credits, right? They all want to see that you've shipped the title. Put the game on your personal website. You've now shipped the title, right? You have, no, like, seriously, you have a game that somebody can play.
That's
Right?
all it is? I thought shipped title meant people could buy it.
No, it doesn't have to.
Free.
I mean, free to play. Look at that, right? Nobody has to buy that, right? League of Legends, huge game.
Oh my
Nobody has to buy that, right?
Don't get me started.
So, you know, put a game up there, right? Like, have something that somebody can play that preferably doesn't crash. But have something that somebody can play, right? Put it up there. Okay, so does anybody here have a personal landing page? I heard a lot of what? Huh? Okay, so there's a concept called a personal landing page. If you search Lifehacker, they actually did like a high five on all this. So if you go like it's about.me, right? So literally what it is, it's a service that you sign up, you register like your domain, kind of like you can have a Facebook domain, LinkedIn domain, or whatever. So it could be like about.me/Sheri Rubin, right? And then on there, you just get one page, right? Just this little thing with a little form, do whatever you want, and you can list all the things about you. Info, ways to contact you, whatever. So if you're kind of all over the place, right? Like you're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and you have your own website here and your portfolio here, you can give them one link that will then show them the links to everything else that you have on the internet, right? All the stuff that you want to do. It's an amazing thing, especially if you're trying to consolidate everything and not lose it, because you can't be on LinkedIn and be like, oh, and here's my Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Then you go to Facebook, you're like, okay, well, here's my Twitter and LinkedIn and right? You're like, you don't want to have to keep updating that. So you just update one page, shows it to everybody, right? And it's also another thing that gets put on Google. So now when they Google your name, you have another thing on the top that you're controlling. It's all about controlling the message. This is why you do your own stuff, because then you control what they see, you can control what shows up on Google, and any of those bad pictures of you getting wasted at a party go down, right? Because we will Google you. Whether it's legal to or not, we will Google you. That's the first thing we'll do. We'll search you on Google, then we'll look for you on Facebook, then we'll look for you on LinkedIn, then we'll look for you on Twitter. We will do that, so you have to make sure it looks okay. Okay, so how many of you have an updated resume? So like right now your resume is totally current. So for those of you who have your hand up, how many of those have it in PDF or read-only format?
Oh.
Look at him, couple hands drop. So here's a tip. Obviously there are a lot of free tools and software out there that will convert a document to a PDF. If you can't do that or you don't want to do that, mark your Word doc as read-only. Here's why. It removes all of those red and green squiggles off of the doc for when they get it. Because there are game names, there's your name, right? There's company names, all that Word doesn't understand. And even if you put it in their dictionary, it's not going to show up in theirs. So if you make it read-only, they don't notice all that stuff. Yeah?
Can I add something to that really quick?
Mm-hmm.
I was was just having a conversation with a coworker earlier this week who was reviewing resumes and stuff like that. And one thing that he was saying was some people submitted their resume through the company website, and it was a .doc file, and it messes up when they submit it in a editable file format. So when you give a PDF, like he threw away a bunch of resumes of perfectly qualified people just because he couldn't
It'll
see
script,
it,
you can't
he
see
couldn't
it.
read it. So he was like, definitely do like the PDF format so that it does not get jumbled up and it is presented exactly how you want it to be.
And if you have the right PDF software, you can even say what percentage you want it to be. So show it as full page, 200%, 75%, right? Make it easy for them. Okay, so for those of you that have the updated resume in PDF or read-only format, how many of you have that right now on your laptop, your tablet, or your phone? Okay, and how many of you have that accessible to you online? So here's the key. Figure out a way to store something, whether it's your Gmail account, you have a Dropbox, it's on your Google Docs, you have your own website, something. So if you happen to be somewhere and they're like, oh man, I'd really love to see your resume, you can be like, well, hold on. Ding, there you go. You now have my resume, right? You wanna reduce the friction, the steps, the barrier to entry to get in there. So how many of you have the updated resume accessible online, but it's in an editable form? So it's not, we got one hand. Okay, two hands. So here's the deal. So it's great to have that PDF, right? So then you can just send it out. But let's say you're at a conference, and I've been at conferences where people are suddenly getting interviews, right? And so you find out it's for this type of job. So you want to tailor the resume for that company. If you have an editable version online that you can go ahead and fix and then save off, you can look that much better, right? Because you're not just sending them some generic resume or whatever you used for the last job. So try and find a way you can have your resume in the cloud or in a way that you can access it that you can fix and edit yourself. Okay, so how many of you, and I'm going to bet most people here, except for the ones that know me, don't know what this is. How many of you have an unabridged resume?
Is that one that's
unabridged
has everything?
Yes. So an unabridged resume, and this is something I recommend to everybody, is where you list everything. Every job, every skill, every software, all your accomplishments, everything from the beginning of time, since you were born, you were doing something, right? And it's on there. And each time you get a job, you throw it on there and you start listing down there. And here's why you do it. Let's say you're going to be an artist, right? So when you're first getting your job, it's all focused on what you can do as an artist. So I can rig, I modeled this, I handled that, etc., right? And now let's say you want to go for a lead position. So you need to show off your management skills, right? Well, if all you have is your old versions of your resumes that just show your art job, you no longer have access to or remember all the management stuff you did at any of your past jobs. That's out the window, right? But that's the stuff you need to focus on. So now if you have this unabridged resume, you can go back to it and go, oh, okay, well, I did that. I've looked at profit and loss statements. I've managed 3 people, right? Like I fixed a bill, right? So every time you need to go for a new job, you have it all in there, and then you can just cherry pick what you need, and you don't have to remember or try and come up with what the deal was 10 years ago when you were doing that job, right?
Does this include seemingly irrelevant jobs like McDonald's?
Sure. I would include everything because you never know, like, let's say you were a manager at McDonald's, right? Now you're in for a management job. Well, if you were in charge of the scheduling, right, you're going for a production job, right? You were in charge of the scheduling and keeping everything on track for 30 plus people each shift, right, or whatever, or each store, and that's what you got to do as a producer, sure, it's going back there, but you can say you have this experience. And then you can, put it as a bullet point, link it as a highlight, whatever, but you can say you have this and you know it, right? Because you've gotten the numbers down. You don't have to try and remember what that was 10 years ago. I'm not saying you should include every job on your actual resume, but it gives you the opportunity to do that, okay?
What if you're just like a cashier or something? You still put that on your unabridged resume?
Everything goes on your unabridged resume. Anything you've ever done, ever, should go on your unabridged resume. Any accomplishment, any award, any job, put it down there because you never know when you're going to need it. That's the whole point. If you're not sending it out to anybody, you're using it to cherry pick for yourself. And again, try and have that in an editable form accessible online. So if you find out about this cool job, then you can pull the bullet points and tailor it right there on the fly. So how many of you have an updated list of references ready for your area? Like, so if you had to apply for a job and ask for references, you could give it right now. Okay, for those of you who have their hands up, how many of you have actually told your references that they're your references? Okay, this is not the time to spring something on somebody, right? If a hiring manager calls up your friend and is like, hey, you're listed at so-and-so's reference, and I'm like, really? I hate that guy, or why the hell would he do that, right? That is not a good impression, right? It happens, right? And even worse, check your references and how they do that, right? The last thing you need is want to give them to somebody who's going to like completely dish you in front of somebody, right? Everybody has to come up with the, well, what could they improve on question, right? Like, that happens all the time. But you don't want somebody who's just going to sit there and trash you the entire time. And I will give you another pro tip. Please, 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 please do not waste space on your resume saying references available upon request. That line should never, ever, ever appear on your resume. Ever. If I want your references, I will ask you for them. More importantly, I expect you to already have them ready to go. I expect that if I ask you or email you, you will give me that list of references because you already have it ready. That is an entire waste of space that you could be using to sell how awesome you are. Okay? I'll get to questions in a little bit. So, how many of you have contact info stored somewhere for your last 3 jobs? And how many of you have a salary history written down? And the person that they would talk to if they wanted to check to see if you were still employed. You need to have that. There's a lot of applications, online applications, paper applications that will ask you for your last 3 jobs. And they will check on that because, again, if you're lying to them then, they are not going to hire you. So you need to know what that is. It's tough a lot of times, especially in games, when companies close down, people move, whatever. But do your best and just be like, I don't think this person is there anymore, but here's what I worked, right? At least do your best. Okay, so how many of you have a current list of your game credits or projects somewhere written down? And of those people, how many of you have also included in that list what platforms those projects were on? Okay, keep your hands up. So for those of you who still have your hands up, how many of those have included not only your platforms that they were on, but what your title or responsibility was for that project? Oh, so there, I was so close. You need to have that. You need a list of all your projects. You need to know what platforms they were on, and you need to be able to say what your role was, what your title was. We're going to want to know that if we ask. Okay, so how many of you currently have a bio? Do you know what a bio is? Okay, it's kind of like what I did at the front. It's like, hey, I've been in the industry for over 15 years and have 30 game credits under my belt. And I serve on the boards of IGA, IGA Chicago, both Game Jams, and Rival Games Oi, right? Like, you have your bio. It's what you use for little about me snippets, when you're speaking, whatever. You need to have a bio ready to go, and it needs to be current. So how many of you who have bios have a list that you could look at that lists all the places that your bio is online and updatable? Wow, no hands on that one.
Wow.
Okay.
Bravo.
So, if you have a bio on LinkedIn, right, and you have your little bio on Twitter, right, like it gives you 160 characters or whatever, but still a bio, right? And then maybe you have a little about me on Facebook, and then you have your website, right, and then maybe you have a list on your school's website, and on this team that you're working for, right? And you have to know where that's at. So when something happens, when you change a job, when you grow another year in the industry, right? Like, it's no longer 14 years in games, it's 15 or whatever that is, right? You need to know, like, oh, that happened, so I should go back through all these places and make that change. So everything's current, everything's up to date, and it all matches. And then what I do is I have this list in Evernote, so not only do I list those places that they're online, I list any information that I need to know. Like, this place only allows 250 characters, this one allows 300. So I know when I have my bio, for this place, SlideShare, I have to shrink it, right? Like, I have to cut down how much I say, right? So I have it in the different forms. I have a small form, medium form, and a long form bio. So have a list of that so that you're not suddenly having somebody find you on there and be like, they're doing what? Like, that company closed like 3 years ago. What's going on, right? Sure, there are some places you can't change it, right? Like, you spoke at a conference 3 years ago and they still have it up. But for any place that you can update it, do it. Again, it's all about controlling the message. All right, so let's see if I can still keep stumping people here. How many of you have Google Alerts set up for your name?
Huh?
So in Google, Yahoo, whatever, you can set up an alert that says, email me anytime this name shows up, or this phrase, or whatever, this keyword. So I have video games, quality assurance, IGA, Sheri Rubin. I have Google Alerts set up for all the people that I'm on boards with, or the people that I'm looking out for companies that I'm interested in working with. Set up a Google Alert for them so you can go, hey, I just saw you were in the news. Glad to hear that you just got Game of the Year 83, right? That's a great way to keep in touch with somebody, right? It gives you a reason to reach out to them, right? So set up Google Alerts. Set up Google Alerts for you, because that way you can tell, hey, somebody just said something bad about me on the internet. I got to deal with that, right? So set up Google Alerts. Okay. How many of you, we talked about this earlier, have an elevator pitch? We got a few people. Okay. So how many of those of you actually have multiple tailored elevator pitches? Okay, so here's the deal. So we explained what an elevator pitch is earlier. So now you want to have multiple tailored ones, right? So I have one that's just explaining what I do personally, right? Like, this is me. This is who I am. I'm engaged. I have one that's for my company, right? But I might have one that's just for stuff when I'm doing IGA. I might have one that's just a personal one. It has nothing to do with games. It's just a, hey, this is what I'm passionate about, right? Like to read, watch TV, I have my TiVo, love my TiVo, right? Like I have like that little tailored pitch. So depending on the situation, I can adapt it. So if you're looking at a couple different types of positions, right? Like you want to be a concept artist or an environment artist, have a pitch for either. So when you know that you've hit somebody and you want to go to them for an environment, you know you can rattle off that pitch that shows you off as that person. So come up with multiple tailored elevator pitches and just try and practice them. Okay, one more. How many of you have recurring reminders or calendar appointments to make sure you're updating any of the above? I got 2 hands on that one, maybe 3. Okay, so set up appointments. How many of you have Google Calendar? Right? Just set up a recurring appointment, right? I have one that literally says, pops up like every 2 to 3 months. It just says, review LinkedIn recommendations. So not only does it remind me to go ask for new ones, but it also reminds me to look at it and I'd be like, oh man, it turns out that guy was a jerk. I don't want him endorsing me. Click remove, right? Like I don't want that guy on my profile, right? So create that, right? Have something that tells you every 6 months, hey, I should go see if it's time to update my Twitter profile or add a new header image, right? Make it fresh. When was the last time I did a blog post on my site, right? I need to add new pieces to my portfolio, right? So it's very easy. There are tons of tools out there to do it. Just do it, right? Like set up your appointments, make it easier for yourself, because then you don't have to try and remember every 6 months. You have it, right? It comes to you in an email, shows up on your calendar for that day and says, hey, dude, you're supposed to do this. What's going on, right? Okay, so action items. Figure out what kind of job you want and how flexible you can be. And don't tell me I want any job or I want to be an artist or a designer or a programmer. Well, pretty much you can do anything. No, right? Especially if you're going for your first entry-level job. I want to know that you can do one thing and you do it well. That's your focus. You know what you want. End of story. Complete the map items checklist. So if there's any items that you did not raise your hand for, consider whether or not you need to do them, right? And if you want to add that to your repertoire so you have it done. Decide your job hunting strategy. So is it a start with just your friends first and then widen out? Or is it a search everywhere, right? And just apply. Figure out what that is. And then create your game plan. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to first add a website and put my portfolio on there. And then I'm going to get my business cards. And then I'm going to start applying for jobs because I'll now have my professional email that has my own name in it, right? So figure out what you want to do and create that plan. Okay, so here's some resources for you. So this first link, if you guys remember the what you should have done like months ago thing, where I was talking about you should have locked your Facebook profile down, etc. Liz has an amazing page where she literally has a whole bunch of those cards. So it puts a humorous spin on this stuff, but it actually gives you good tips, like how hireable you are based on what your lunch order was, right? Like, was it the most expensive item or the least expensive item or somewhere in the middle, right? Like, did you do a handshake, right? Like, was it firm? Was it sloppy? Like, what's the deal, right? Like, what did you do ahead of time? So totally look at that link. Take it to heart. I think it's awesome. And then there's Kate Elling. So Kate Elling is a teacher, and she was marking papers, and just like a lot of us, she got frustrated, right? Because she's seen all this crap. She's worried about her students. She doesn't know what to do. So she does this little slide deck, this little PowerPoint, and it's like the 51 things you need to know to get into the industry. It went viral. Everybody loved it. Everybody's passing it around. It got so recommended that it actually got upgraded, so there's 100 things. I love 51 things part. I can't speak as much to the 100 things, but it's an amazing thing. It goes over a lot of it gone over here. It goes into detail. Live it, love it, breathe it. It's fantastic. And then obviously the map items checklist. And so if anybody, you can contact me later. I will send you a document that goes over all the items you need to turn. That's the resources you need for job searching. And again, just email me if you need the links. Is everybody okay if I go forward, or are we still sliding them down? We're good? 1 sec? Okay. Home stretch. Yep. We've taken a lot of the questions already, so. Are we good?
Yep.
Awesome. Okay, so that's most of the goodies. So here's the obligatory thank you slide, because every speaker has to have one. So want to give thanks. So first off, I want to thank Columbia for hosting this event. We appreciate it. I also want to thank IGA Chicago, and not just because I'm on their board and involved, but for allowing me to speak and talk to you guys. I definitely want to thank all of my industry friends, colleagues, and mentors who've made working in this industry so worthwhile. I would not be here without them, and I would not be enjoying the industry that I love without them. So I really appreciate it. That's kind of a matrix. It's one of those Facebook friend matrices where they put it all together. So, and then most importantly, I want to thank all of you who came out here to hear this talk. I hope you learned something. You were inspired to do something I talked about just by showing up. It means you're active, you're engaged, and that's just what this industry needs. So, obligatory question slide. So obviously everybody's been peppering with questions throughout the talk, so we've covered a bit of it, but I will stay until they kick us out, which I'm told is in a half an hour from now. But here's how you can contact me. So if you want any of the checklists, if you want the docs, if you want specific lists and more resources, I have books that I recommend, videos that I recommend, etc. Feel free to email me or find my contact somewhere, pester me, whatever. This is what I do. If you're curious, on Twitter, occasionally I get to judge the IGA Scholars applications as a backup judge, and some of them aren't good. So I will, one of my colleagues called it Truth to Snark, so I will start this whole thread when I'm doing judges like, dear scholars, giving a sandwich to a homeless person is not voluntary. Love, Sheri, right? Like, so go over all these tips. So if you're thinking, no, I'm seriously said that. Or I beta tested the game, not volunteering. So I pay for my indie games. Great, you don't pirate, still not volunteering, right? So on my Twitter, you'll in the backlog, and I storified it, you'll see a lot of the comments that I've made for scholars. So that'll help you if you're going to apply. And then I guess at this point, it's basically done, and I will just stay here until they kick us out. So if you have any questions, I'm pretty much an open book, and then we can always talk afterwards. Yeah?
Hey everybody, why don't you thank her for coming?
Thank you!